Jon Pertwee was born on this day, the 7th of July, 1919. He died before I was born, but nevertheless had a huge impact on my life. Without him, I probably wouldn't be here on YouTube talking about this silly little show called Doctor Who. But I am not alone in my admiration for the man. Joining me tonight, talking all things Pertwee, is a man who has vivid memories of watching him, Stephen Noonan.
Good evening. That makes me sound so old. But I suppose I am.
And of course, we have Luke as well.
As ever, part of the furniture.
Who isn't quite so old. In fact, he's only a tiny bit older than Ben. Is that right?
Yeah, we're both born after.
Were you born? What year were you born? 98.
Yeah, Ben's 8. I'm 7.
So one of you was born a year after Jon Pertwee died, and the other one the year. Is that right? 96.
Yeah.
2
years after.
My God, yeah, because I vividly remember the day I was driving down to London from Liverpool, and the news came over the radio, and I had to pull over. I was devastated. Unfortunately, the person I was going to see was sympathetic. And this was a girl I was seeing at the time who had vividly remembered, and she knew the title, not the one with the maggots, but the Green Death. Was a very, very vivid memory with her. But yeah, no, it was an extraordinary day, and was that a week before the McGann film?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think there was a little tribute, wasn't there, after or before?
It's a week. I think it was it a week before, or a week after? It was a week before, wasn't it? Yeah, it must have been.
Didn't it go out earlier in the States? So I think it might have been before.
I think they got it earlier than us for some reason. Yeah. Lucky old them, I say.
How privileged they were.
Well, indeed. So, gosh, yeah. And now...
So 14th of May. 12th of May in Canada. So Canada got it first. 14th of May in the US, and 20th of May, Pertwee passed, and then 27th of May we finally got it.
Yeah.
So almost like the opposite.
It was so long ago. I was still in my 20s. But it seems like yesterday. And now, if he were alive today, how old would he be?
104.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So today would be his 104th birthday. Well, happy birthday to John. And there's a little. Well, funnily enough, I bought a bottle of wine to celebrate.
Very fitting.
I should have got some gorgonzola, shouldn't I? There's a little song here.
Water biscuits as well.
That's actually by George Harrison in honor of John Lennon. But yes, shall I? Oh God, the screen's gone.
You're still there, though.
Are you going to drink? Are you going to drink some rum this evening, Luke?
Have some navy rum.
I've not got any on me at the moment. Yeah, I should have got some navy rum.
I've bought this bottle specially. So Ben is going to host this evening. Is that right?
I will try my best to keep us in check
and guide us, because we don't want to go on too late, because Ben's got to go to work tomorrow, haven't we? So what time are we going to try and
we try and wrap things up by 11, so we've got a few hours to discuss all things.
I think it should give us about a 3-hour stream, which would be fitting for Doctor himself.
Indeed. So where should we start?
Should we start at the beginning with our first memories of the man, our first encounters?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
and then work our way around there. So who wants to go first?
I think just taking a quick segue into the chat to say hello to everyone who's joining us tonight. Hello, Stylish One.
Hello, Stylish One. Wouldn't be the same without Stylish One. Who else is there? Hooving with the Small Collection.
Joe Joe Bowers is also with us. Evening, guys.
Excellent.
Evening, Joe.
Excellent.
Evening.
Luke Pietnik is here as well.
Hello, Luke.
Very there good. You are. I seem to be stuck up here, he says. Unfortunately, your image at the moment, Stephen, is on the bottom. So
my that's right. It's in the wrong place, isn't it? That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
The dandy and the clown are up top, but which way around is it?
But they're all up there. But there's another. There's an imposter at the end there. He's not here yet. Well, why don't you go first on this?
Okay.
This.
Oh, and Timescales is also with us. Greetings.
Greetings.
Timescales. Yes, greetings from the States. Fantastic.
And greetings to all the lurkers as well.
Meanwhile, I'm gonna try and open this.
Why not? Why not?
I can't find the bottle opener. Just a minute. Just hold on.
We shall talk amongst ourselves. It feels only right to have a bottle of wine, doesn't it, for a celebration of Jon's birthday and life and career, which is basically this stream, because we're going to cover, I guess, mainly Doctor Who, because this is a Doctor Who channel, so that's what we do. So we're going to talk about the Third Doctor's character journey, sort of season breakdown, memorable moments, defining moments of the Third Doctor, and I guess the legacy of that, really.
Yeah. Which means still continuing to this day. Big Finish gave us a reveal for the next box set. But we'll get to that in a different stream when we talk Big Finish.
Let's talk about
that. I can't find the bottle opener. But fortunately, there's one I prepared earlier.
Okay.
So, yes, where are we?
Right. So I'll start with where I began. Despite being a massive Third Doctor fan, my first encounter
is to Jon Pertwee. There we are.
There we go. Let's raise the.
Splink. Oh yeah, actually, I've also I should put it in this, but it wouldn't be quite the same. This is a mug based on the 1975 Weetabix. Sea Devil there, and Sarah Jane, of course, in her robot costume. Quite sure what she's doing in that. And we've got is that Azaxia or is Islia? Impossible to tell them apart. So yes, go on, Ben.
It's definitely not Scar or
Slar. That's Slar.
Yeah. On the bottom of the Weetabix, it says, what does it sound? It's a Sal. So it's a sort of dyslexic version. Is he called Slar?
Yeah, it's Slar.
On the Weetabix card. On the Weetabix card, which is over there. Hang on, wait a minute.
Getting all the trivia here. Yeah.
All the Weetabix trivia.
All the Weetabix trivia.
The Weetabix goodness.
Yeah.
What's the current motto?
Fiber, isn't it? Get your fiber.
No, there's those adverts where you've got young people doing massive feats of strength or whatever.
Because they've had their bowl of Weetabix.
Oh yeah, someone's had their Weetabix.
Somebody's had the Weetabix. Yeah, that's a tagline.
Is that legible? No.
Or the light shining on it at the moment. Oh, I can see text, but I can't read it.
I move the. Oh God! Now I can't see you.
Now.
No, can you?
You can just see
it says Sal anyway. So for years I thought he was called Sal. Amongst the many things we didn't know at the time. Yes, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
This is an argument in favour of editing things, isn't it? No, carry on.
This is our first little tangent, and we're not even 10 minutes in.
No.
Hey, it's all right. It's okay. It's us. So my first encounter with Jon was in Wurzel Gummidge, because it was my mum's favourite show. So I watched the VHS of that, and then in 2006 got Inferno on DVD, and Part 3 changed my Doctor Who trajectory, and I instantly became a Third Doctor fan.
It's a particularly good episode 3, isn't it? Because I was for this symposium tonight, I'd intended in the last 2 weeks, once we decided to do this, to watch every single Pertwee episode. and I didn't get because you think, oh, season 7 shouldn't take long. It's only 4 stories, but you've got what I call a Septua trilogy, i.e., a trilogy of 7-parters, and that's a lot of episodes, isn't it? But I just about managed to get to the end of Inferno, and I was dipping in and out of other stories, but that is incredibly strong, isn't it? That episode,
Yes.
when he arrives in the parallel universe. And you've immediately got that fantastic car chase.
I think that's what stuck to me, that sequence.
Was it?
I think, and the music's so ingrained.
Yes.
On that sequence as well.
That sort of percussive. Yeah. It's really powerful.
Post-nuclear industrial Gothic landscape as well.
To use my phrase, yes, the post-nuclear industrial, because that story more than any other sort of epitomizes that, doesn't it? And you got those. I mean, it's not just episode 3. It starts in episode 2 when you're still in our universe after Pertwee's had the conversation with Courtney at the top of that gasometer about Krakatoa, the Sandra Straits, and then he sees Private Wyatt, or as he pronounces, Private What? What? And there's that extraordinary shot of the whole oil refinery, which it's set on, with which is the real sort of the ultimate post-nuclear industrial Gothic sort of shot, isn't it? Borrowing so much from Quatermass 2. And one day, Ben,
we didn't talk about Quatermass.
Well, you should. What I tell you, we should sort of designate a time to have a discussion about it. So
yeah,
so that you.
I've got no excuse then.
Strong arm you into it.
But no, that third episode and throwing you and the acting of Courtney with the eye patch and Caroline John. Is it's so powerful, and it must have been so confusing if you'd just tuned in, not having seen him travel the week before, because you stay there. Does it stay there for the whole episode? Do we go back to?
I think there is
our universe
in episode 3, isn't there? Because you have like that spinning. If you don't that what looks like a close up on a disco mirror ball.
Yeah.
That's not the strongest visual in the story, is it?
No.
Oh, that's very good. I felt like I was there watching it. Go on, Ben. Yes, sorry I interrupted, but I was so enthused by the memory.
I think that's me really, and then sort of became my doctor really, because he was my family's doctor. Everyone in my family's John's the doctor,
as opposed to your family doctor.
Yeah.
Not your GP.
Bring him up. I mean, I wish, he could get it sorted, wouldn't he? There'd be no waiting.
Well, I said because they were on Earth so much, I actually thought he was a GP for ages. And our doctor, who was called Dr. Henderson, coincidentally, because Dr. Henderson is the name of the doctor in the hospital in Ashbridge Cottage Hospital, who actually was very eccentric and wore an Inverness cape, So. It was all sort of of course that's what doctors wear. So it was it all seemed to fit. So is that it then? Oh God, it's just the problem with the visuals. It makes me quite self-conscious. Luke, what was yours?
Ooh, my first memory would be Frontier in Space. So this would have been around after I'd watched Series 1. So I was aware.
So just to go back to Ben, had you seen the revived series yet when you saw?
No, Wurzel I think was 2003.
Right.
And it took me a while to put 2 and 2 together that was John,
the same bloke.
Yeah.
And had you seen the TV movie, the McGann thing?
No,
nothing.
No,
so the very first Doctor Who you saw was Inferno. Is that right?
No, that was my first classic I saw.
Oh, sorry. So where are we? Because hang on a minute. The revised series starts in 2005,
and then I got into the classic series in 2006.
I see. Right. Okay.
That was my first.
So Tennant was already the Doctor.
Yeah, Tennant was pretty much established. Yeah, I think.
And did you make did you find it difficult to make the transition from Tennant to Pert, or to sort of consider them to be the same character?
Not really, because I saw a bloke singing in his yellow car going, that's the Doctor.
I see. So there was a common denominator between the characters.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think
when you're that young as well, your brain's much more flexible, isn't it, and will accept these things quite easily. Like you're told this is the same man, and you go with it.
This is fascinating because this is something I've got no conception of, because there were, as I've said many times, Jon Pertwee was the Doctor, and there was no notion of it being anybody else.
No repeats or anything for you to be able to experience.
72 to 74, which is a hell of a long time when you're 4, 5, 6. That he was the Doctor, and so it was a huge, quantum leap to make to consider anybody else. Yeah, but we'll talk about that. I'm going to keep segueing, or actually the word is interrupting, isn't it? Go on, Luke.
So for me, I had seen Christopher Eccleston as a Doctor in Series 1. I was aware of the idea of regeneration because David Tennant had popped up for that brief scene at the end of...
didn't you? And because I used to watch Confidential religiously, so you'd get glimpses of, the other Doctors in that. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have strong memories of Confidential, to be honest. I definitely saw some of them. But...
Was that on immediately after it?
Yeah, it was straight after the episode. Right. It was like tuned on to BBC Three.
Yeah.
Although I didn't watch Series 1 when it went out live. And I think they had the Confidential cut downs on the DVDs, didn't they? So it's only like 15 minutes of it. So they probably... I think I would have watched them, but yeah, there wouldn't have been much Classic Who footage in that 15-minute segment. But yeah, so
there were little clips, were there, from the old series?
Especially if there was like a returning element like the Daleks, you'd get a montage of all the Dalek stories in that.
I mean, is it? Yeah, it's only the Daleks in Series 1, isn't it? And I suppose the Cyberman heads.
And the Cyberman head in the museum at the beginning. Yeah. It is, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. That's the only sort of returning element.
Oh, Autons, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we keep doing this? Or I keep doing it?
I mean, I think I was the one who said it first, that Daleks are the only return.
It only actually occurred to me the other day that and this may be something that's widely known or a staggeringly obvious thing, that the choice of the name of the first episode is the name of the important companion, i.e., it's the same as an unearthly child. Rose is the name of the first episode is named after the companion. Which had never occurred to me. So why Frontier in Space?
That just happened to be the one my dad had on VHS. I think my mum just saw it when she was getting birthday presents for him. He likes Doctor Who. Here's an old Doctor Who.
And he particularly liked Jon Pertwee Doctor Who, didn't he?
I suppose so. But yeah, I think mainly just because that would have been when he was growing up.
To me, I mean, of course, obviously, or not necessarily obviously, but my memories start with Sea Devils. So season 7 and season 8 and largely season 9, because I remember very little apart from all I remember season 9 is the terrifying moment of the door on the sea fort. And I've got a vague memory of that bit in The Mutants. Is it episode 1 where it's another door? I've got a thing about doors, where one of the mutants gets his arm stuck in the door. He's turning. He's partially metamorphosing.
Yeah, and he gets shot by
and he gets shot. There's something about the sort of the notion of a door being a protective thing, but and you can protect yourself from somebody else by closing the door, but then if they can burn through, or if they get trapped in the door and can get through, That was terrifying to me. So this is a recurring thing. It was always doors or burning through doors. And that was the moment in the only bit of the mutants I remember. And I remember nothing of the Time Monster at all. So the point being, I knew nothing of Inferno until it came out on VHS. Or no, there was the one episode on the Jon Pertwee years, wasn't there? Episode 7's on the Jon Pertwee years. That was the first.
The links are on the DVD, aren't they? But...
are they? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
When Jon pretends to be watching it and then turning away to the camera.
Like, very funny, very funny.
Very funny, yes. Oh, very funny. Yes, what's that one about? Oh, very funny.
I think it's when he comes out of the TARDIS, isn't it? From Spearhead.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think that's what it is.
That's decades ago since I've seen that. So that was strange, sort of just seeing episode 7, and of course everything's finished, isn't it? It's all over. And so seeing that in
wraps up as a nice happy ending, and you don't realise the horror that's come before.
Seeing that in isolation was just so strange, and not seeing the rest of the story. But when I did eventually get to see it with the VHS, I was blown away by how the standards of it, the location shooting particularly, and the atmospherics of the music, the eeriness of it. And the only thing for my money that lets it down is the Primords, which I think look very silly. But then I said, oh yeah, I can show you now that for years, because in the Radio Times special, and these were pretty much the only photos we had, certainly the only color photos we had for years, there were all sorts of misunderstandings. Obviously, there were only the first episode titles of most of the Hartnell stories. But where it says Inferno...
That's what the ambassadors, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, does that?
So if you can see... You can see... I don't know how to manipulate this. Where it says Inferno there, I thought those photos...
with the Primords.
Were Primords. Because it says, now become a full Primord. Because we had no photos of the Primords till the 80s.
It does almost look like a transition there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it actually...
You've got like a greeny filter like the slime from Inferno as well, haven't you, on that?
Yeah, and I thought, oh my God, they look amazing. So when I finally saw a photo of a Primord in Doctor Who Monthly or whatever it is, whenever it was, I was sort of somewhat disappointed. And they do have joke shop teeth. Those plastic teeth.
Especially the John Levine.
I think the transitional phase looks a lot better, doesn't it? Like particularly that there's that black and white picture of the scientist or the great
on the target cover.
Well, there's Private Wyatt looks great. What? And the scientist is played by Ian Fairbairn, who is a regular participant, a favourite actor of Douglas Camfield. He's in Invasion somewhere. He's in quite a few of Douglas Camfield's stories. Oh God, off the top, he's probably in Web of Fear somewhere, etc., etc. And he looks particularly chilling, doesn't he? And I thought they eventually turned into that. There goes the picture again. And so that stands up very well. It's interesting that you both saw. And when I saw Frontier in Space again when the VHS came out, was the first time I'd seen the whole story since it was on in 73. I'd seen one of the episodes at an event, I think at the BFI in 1983. And that was another one that shot for shot was exactly as I'd remembered it. The Ogrons burning through the door was exactly as I remembered it, as the Sea Devils was as I'd remembered it. I think what other stories were almost exactly the same. Most of the Hinchcliffe ones were exactly the same, with just the odd dodgy effect I hadn't remembered. But those two particularly were and Carnival of Monsters was pretty much as I'd remembered it. And obviously Invasion of the Dinosaurs was a bit of a shock. But again, seeing these things in black and white and then seeing them in color was a thing. But I was delighted when I saw Frontier in Space that it was so sort of And so, how was that experience of seeing Frontier in Space compared to the revived series, Luke?
It just felt like all one show to me, really.
Did it?
at
It
that
felt
age.
like the same show,
Yeah,
really. And you were how old?
8 at this time, I believe. So yeah, the difference didn't necessarily stand out as well. And I'd also grown up watching a lot of Thunderbird stuff, and not really realizing how old that necessarily was. Because I think when you're that young, like, time is hard to measure at that length. Like, it's hard to comprehend how long ago the 60s or 70s were, and especially with how good Thunderbirds was, I suppose, for the time, like in terms of it all being done on film and in color and such. That also worked particularly well. And Spearhead sort of has that vibe as well, because it is using a lot of Jerry Anderson models, isn't it, for the spaceships, all repurposed.
Sorry, did you say Spearhead from Space rather than Frontier in Space? As the first
I probably did, didn't I? I meant Frontier.
Yeah, sorry. We were talking about Frontier in Space.
Yeah, we're definitely talking about Frontier in Space.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank God for that, because I've been talking about Frontier in Space the last half an hour, and I've suddenly realised we were talking about the wrong one. Yeah, fine, yeah. It's Frontier in Space is remarkably faithful to my memory, and that's largely to do with the fact that there's hardly any bloody CSO in it.
I mean, you've also got the Lunar Penal Colony, of course, which was referenced in Bad Wolf. When the Doctor, Jack, and Linda with the Wire captured, they're told they're being sent to Lunar Penal Colony. And so with that, it made it all feel nicely connected for me. And so it didn't seem as far apart. I think I've told the story before about how, obviously I knew there were different Doctors now, but I'd only seen Rose as the companion. So seeing Joe Grant, I've got this young woman with blonde hair here on screen. I was like, oh, is that... So that's this series version of the Doctor. Is that the older version of Rose?
I see. You thought that was Rose.
Yeah, right, initially.
Rose. Right, yeah. No, I can see how you. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Because at that time I wasn't really aware of the concept of different companions.
Well, that's interesting. And what was the next story you saw after Frontier in Space?
I think it must have been.
Was it another story with Joe in it?
No, it would have been Dalek Invasion of Earth, or at least the next classic.
I
think I would have got that the same Christmas that Christmas Invasion went out. So I probably watched
which Doctor's in the Dalek Invasion of Earth?
Ooh, the first one.
Oh right, no, I don't know much about that.
No. It's an alien concept to you.
It's a grey area.
I have no idea.
Black and white.
I should the black and white era. I only watch the color stuff in black and white, and I'm looking forward to them colorizing all the black and white stuff so I can watch that. So I do everything the wrong way around. But what about you, Ben? What was the next Pertwee story you saw after Inferno? Was it
Spearhead?
Oh, I see. So did you start to think that Liz was always going to be there as the companion?
Yeah, and I was shocked when I watched Carnival. I was like, "Where's the ginger lady gone?
Where's the ginger lady?"
Yeah, I was like, "Where's she?"
I think by this time I'd have had the Monsters and Villains book, which was this wonderful little display of all the different stories that certain monsters appeared in. I think you had all the Cybermen stories up to that point, all the Dalek ones. They also showed off a lot of mainly new series content, but it sort of like took some of those early new series monsters and showed you all their classic stories, gave you bits of trivia and such, told you how many parts they were, the dates they went out. And so that was a wonderful little eye-opener into what Classic Who had to offer. It didn't tell you which ones were lost, though.
Was it very exciting to find out that this series had been going on so long and there was so much to discover of it? Was it, or was that in any way daunting or overwhelming, or?
I think it was quite joyous, because when the series wasn't on, you could go back in the back catalogue and be experiencing new Doctor Who, but it's old.
It seems so huge as well, didn't it? Whereas now, having seen a lot of it, it shrinks in size a bit, doesn't it? But, yeah.
This week it seemed as vast as ever, and I want to watch all of Pertwee before we talk about the thing, and I thought it'd be fine if I can do every 2 days I'll probably get through a season. Well, that's cobblers, isn't it? It's impossible because you want to watch it properly.
We should have done a McGann tribute instead. That would have been feasible.
That would be if only they could all be like Paul McGann, or at the very least Christopher Eccleston. Have the decency to just do a handful of stories, so we can get a sort of a handle on the whole era without having to spend. Somebody sort of worked out if you watched all of the Pertwee era, an episode a week. Was it take 18 months or something? I think
it's 128 episodes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
God knows how long it takes to do Tom Baker like that. Yeah. Some people's lifetime.
I think probably about 2 years, isn't it? Because they're on just under 6 months a year.
Yeah.
And there's 5 of them, so it would be over 2 years. I think if you're doing one a week.
Yeah. And what about the Hartnells? How long would that take? Not that I know anything about that era, but you can fill me in.
Probably just under 3 years, wouldn't it?
Well,
that would be more or less like it was at the time as well, because
it would be, wouldn't it?
How many they went out?
Yeah.
With.
Yeah, and of course
the same gaps that they did back then.
So when you were watching, when you Ben watched Inferno, and when you Luke, I may call you Luke, mayn't I?
Yes, you may.
You don't mind, do you? When you were watching, did you watch it all in one go, or did you pace it out a bit?
I think I probably would have paced out Frontier in Space it 3 parts at a time, because I think it's a double VHS one, isn't it? So I probably would have watched 3 episodes.
And did you feel like it was all made of padding, as some people have said?
No, not at the time, really.
I think people have accused it of being all made of padding, but I think that it's a wonderful way of telling that story, because the stakes are gradually getting higher as the
both
episodes
sides,
go on.
isn't it, as well?
Yeah, and you get the sense of this impending war, and the stakes are getting higher and higher.
I suppose it's because they're thrown from cell to cell, aren't they? So it feels stationary in terms of location, but plot-wise, it's all changing quite a bit.
I just obviously, I experienced all these stories with a gap between each one, and so that takes the sting out of, I suppose, the repetitiveness of a lot of getting locked up and escaping again. But there was no sense at the time, and I remember it incredibly vividly when I was relatively young, of it just being extremely unrepetitive, and it felt like it was going somewhere. But it's one of those stories where people go, it's just all padding, I think that might be a symptom of people watching things all in one go and not getting it as it was made to be.
Yeah,
made to be consumed.
Take that into account when watching the show now, or like the classic series, some stories now, is that it was made to just go out once and be one a week.
Never
so
be
it's
repeated,
like you want it to be understandable to those who have missed a week.
Some stories, work as well, and of course, in the early VHS days, they were cutting out the cliffhangers and they were putting them out as features, and some of them worked incredibly well. I think Spearhead from Space works brilliantly like that. Partly because it's all shot on film, partly because Robert Holmes is such a great sort of, he's not a time waster. There's something very, very economical about that storytelling. It goes from event to event to event to event. And
once you've left the location behind, you're not necessarily going to go back there for no reason.
He moves. He just keeps moving the action on very, very, very sort of logically and efficiently. And that one, I remember thinking, this way, and that was one of the rare occasions where there was a friend of mine, whose girlfriend was, he was a huge Doctor Who fan I'd met him at university, and we'd sort of, recognise each other as Doctor Who fans. And he came back to stay at my house with his girlfriend Kate, and she was like really not enchanted by the idea of us sitting, me showing him all these Doctor Who stories that he hadn't seen, because although he's been a Doctor Who fan, it was like he hadn't got the videos or whatever. And he was going, "Oh my God, you got all these!" And I was going, and so. But the one that she was impressed by was Spearhead from Space. She went, "Oh, this is like a proper film. This is real." I remember saying, "This is really impressive, actually." And it does work. It's an anomaly, isn't it? It's one of those strange ones that sort of that it's not like anything else because it was all shot on film.
Yeah, and I mean that only happened
by
chance, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, had it been, because that was Derek Sherwin's decision, really. Had it been a different producer, it might not have gone that same way.
Well, bearing in mind that we're going to limit ourselves to not digressing every time a digression occurs to us, let's stick to some sort of schedule. Where are we going now?
Should we dive into season 7 and have a little chat about that? Touch upon Jon's character, because it's a very different Third Doctor to where we get in Planet of the Spiders.
Okay.
Off you go, Ben.
Well, should we dive in with Spearhead? Because it's an interesting.
We were just talking about it.
Yeah. So it fits well for the tangent.
Yeah,
flew quite well. Because you get this sort of shaking off of the Second Doctor within it. Because I think the first 2 episodes you have a quite comedic Pertwee.
In the first episode, you hardly ever Pertwee at all, of course, do you?
Yeah, but collapse and the wheelchair.
Yeah,
it's funny. It almost feels like they're trying to make an effort not to show his face just yet. Because like when he's there on screen first, trying to find his shoes, he's like hunched over, isn't he? You just see the back of his head.
So always. It's one of my quiz questions of this story. What's the very first word that we hear Pertwee say?
Shoes.
No. See, we often no. We're all wrong. Any,
madam?
No.
Like
think it's rather wonderfully appropriate for the era. That's all I'm going to give you. It couldn't be more appropriate for the era.
Color?
Unless he said, color or exile to Earth.
Unit?
He says, Lethbridge Stewart.
Cool.
Yeah, those are the first words he says, Lethbridge Stewart. How wonderful to see you, old chap, or my dear. It might be my dear fellow. But we hardly see him at all in that first episode, and it's just that and shoes and the wheelchair scene, isn't it?
Timescales pointed out, "Unhand me, madam."
Unhand me, madam. Yes, of course. There's another line in it, but that's not the first line.
No.
That's right.
That wonderful the chase music as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Which, of course, he hated those scenes, didn't he? He hated. I was horrified. I can't watch the escape in the wheelchair or the shower scene in the Duc d'Orléans shower or the trying on of hats. He hated that because he desperately wanted to play it straight, and this is the sort of the fascinating paradox or surprise that you get this actor who is known almost completely and solely for comedy, hiding under the green umbrella and all that, decides to play it completely straight, which must have been a huge surprise to the audience or anybody who knew him from anything else. An old friend of mine, my friend Tony, who's so old that he remembers Harnell, rather like probably about the same age as Captain Briggs, was appalled. No, actually older. was appalled when he heard that it was Jon Pertwee, because he thought, oh, well, that's just, he's a comedy actor. He's not going to be able to handle the drama of this. And then became surprised when he delivered as a dramatic actor, and is for my money the most serious and committed and passionate of all the Doctors. There's hardly any humor at all after these early episodes. You know, the humor is his gifts, as his experience, his charisma as a comedy performer are there fueling a very, very serious performance, and often a very abrasive and you know, what might have been an unlikable character without all that charm and skill underneath. But he's not.
It's a twinkle, isn't it? In the
yeah, but it's sort of invisible.
It's not a comedy routine or anything like that, is it?
It's so straight that the Jon Pertwee Doctor, you know. I think perhaps I think Stephen Moffat said, you know, he's the most often mischaracterized. He is the showman. He's the flamboyant. He's really, really very, very straight and very, very serious in the part.
It also comes from the look, doesn't it? The showman aspect.
I think you get flashes
the fact that he's dressed like a stage magician, as somebody said. You
get flourishes in like the Three Doctors when he gives Jo the flowers and stuff.
They're momentary, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very.
And they all serve a purpose. They're not there for the comedy per se. They're there to emphasize something in the story.
No. I think it's a conversation we were having where we were talking about Rula from Carnival of Monsters. That's not a gratuitous voice or piece of comedy. That's there for quite a dark, serious purpose. And she says, "Don't do that, Doctor. It's horrible." You know.
Yeah, it's there to show the juxtaposition, isn't it?
The fact that the specimens on show are sentient life forms, and so the grotesque of that, the grotesquerie of that is horrific rather than funny. And it's only go on.
I was just going to. You go first, actually.
No, I've finished. Carry on.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, back to Spearhead now. It's interesting that you say, you know, it is a very punchy, well-written story, but it doesn't necessarily know what character the Doctor's going to be yet. I mean, hence why he's off on the sidelines for the first episode and a bit. And so it does feel maybe that the writing of the Doctor in the story is one of the weaker aspects of the script. Just because there's no clue on how John's going to play it yet when Rob Holmes was writing it.
It's very interesting because when we were talking the other night, you were saying, you know, when Terence Dicks writes Tom Baker for the first time in Robot, he's met Tom Baker and he's writing, aligning it with this extraordinarily unusual and eccentric human being that he's met.
I think he used the excuse that they can always tone it down later as post-generation.
I always think, thank God they did, you know, and it's a very different Doctor from the rest of the from the Doctor we get for the rest of the Hinchcliffe era. My feeling about the Jon Pertwee Doctor or the third Doctor, there goes the screen again. The Doctor, the third Doctor in Spearhead from Space, is that as soon as he arrives in the unit laboratory that looks like a gymnasium, whatever that is. He's bang on the money in that scene. Bang on the money, and I think that again, it's Lethbridge Stewart, my dear fellow. That scene is magnificent, and he immediately establishes a rapport with Liz, and he. It wasn't you I was having a conversation with. That's right. Somebody was another younger fan was saying, "Oh, there's that scene where the Brigadier automatically accepts that Pertwee is the Doctor after he's examined the fragments of meteorite." And he says, "So why would they want to kidnap the Doctor?" And as though he's accepted that it is the Doctor. And this friend of mine was saying, "Well, what? It's too soon for him to accept that the person that he saw in the bed, who quite clearly wasn't Patrick Troughton, is the Doctor. And then the skepticism is retained in that first scene when Pertwee arrives in the laboratory. And I said, well, I think that the Doctor there in that scene is, in inverted commas, the person we think or may not be the Doctor. However, he's come out of that police box. You know, if he can travel in time and space, he can probably change his physical appearance as well.
Yeah.
So
I suppose
why would
people are also sort of used to the later Brigadier, aren't they? Like the Three Doctors Brigadier, who is much more of the butt of a joke, the butt of the joke in some ways.
Well, in is it your favorite story, Luke, in Web of Fear, or one of your favorite stories, or is your favorite Doctor? Isn't he? He's so much sharper and brighter, and immediately accepts the concept of the police box being a time machine in that story. It does
feel like there's a bit of a degradation in some way.
He oscillates between being that character and being a buffoon, and then there's a reset, and they get that, you know, even though he's met, you know, umpteen alien threats, you know, there'll be a week when they go, an alien threat? Well, don't be ridiculous, Doctor. You know, well, hang on a minute. This is business as usual.
Yeah, it's also like it depends on what story needs him to be, isn't it? Sometimes.
It's like the sonic screwdriver sometimes open every door in the universe and sometimes doesn't open this door or whatever it is.
Can't do that. It's got bolts on it.
The need for drama to be about conflict is essential to that relationship. And so if the Brigadier becomes too accustomed to the alien threats and too much of an ally of the Doctor, then you ruin that kind of butting heads thing, which is sort of an essential part of their chemistry or whatever.
And I suppose it's why in some stories like Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which me and Ben coincidentally watched this
was that coincidence? You didn't actually
didn't speak to each other about it.
I mean, did you go for it because we'd done the Green Death as well, Ben, or did you just fancy?
And it is a sort of a sequel to the Green Death, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of thematic.
I was just in the mood for it, to be honest. I just was looking at the shelf, going, "I fancy that one tonight."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny
well,
how
we can
in
talk
that
about
you've got.
We could talk about every single story if we're very, very quick, but we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah.
But
just to say quickly on the Brigadier character, because you've got General Finch in that story, the Brigadier and the Third Doctor then seem to get along better there because you've got a different military.
You've got General Finch playing the antagonistic military figure, so the Doctor becomes more aligned with the Brigadier. That's interesting. Yeah. Of course, this is the Doctor Brigadier is based on the Quatermass Colonel Breen relationship. Ben.
I'll get to it.
Which is because really, really antagonistic, isn't it? In the BBC version of it, and is it less antagonistic in the film? Are you familiar with the Hammer film, Luke?
Yeah, I am.
Where it's Julian Glover, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it as kind of daggers drawn as it is in the BBC as it is in the BBC version? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
If
anything, it almost feels like it's more daggers drawn because I don't think you have as much of an initial chance for friendship there.
Yeah.
I think because it's a much pacier thing, isn't it? It needs to get to that meat. Quicker.
I mean, I think in Quatermass and the TV version, you've got a discrepancy between the skills of the actor, i.e., Andre Morel is fantastic as Quatermass, but the actor who plays Colonel Breen, whose name now escapes me, I think he's only got one mode, which is really angry. And of course, you know, Nicholas Courtney's got all the other sort of charming aspects, and when he does indignant or he does antagonistic, there's always a twinkle going on there as well.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they gave him the eye patch. You can't see the twinkle in the eye.
not on that side. You can't. Right. On that side. But to go back to what we were saying, but so regardless of whether Courtney in that scene had accepted that the Doctor had been kidnapped, there's a huge amount of skepticism when Pertwee walks into the lab for the first time. But I think it's both the writing and Jon Pertwee's instant charisma in the role that convinces the Brigadier partly by his scientific knowledge, but by the fact that he has a remarkable level of charismatic, appealing doctorness to him in that very first scene, and so which convinces the Brigadier that he is the Doctor, and his instant way he charms Caroline John, who's been putting up with the Brigadier's superciliousness and General Scobie saying, no, good to see a pretty face around here, Stuart. Yeah. Suddenly, finally, there's somebody who treats her as a human being and as a fellow scientist, and that's beautiful instantly.
The Doctor almost does what she's been wanting to do for a while anyway, where he's very anti-authoritarian. He comes in and was laughing in the face of the Brigadier.
Yeah.
She enjoys that because that's what she's been wanting to do this whole time, really, but it's had to bite her tongue a little bit.
I think it's rather wonderful, the chemistry there. There's instant chemistry between Pertwee and Caroline John, and there's a sense of a meeting of minds, and it really works. And it's a shame, at risk of sounding like some terrible, pious, progressive, politically correct person, but it is a shame that the team that was Barry Letts and Terence Dix couldn't have nurtured that and thought, actually, let's not dumb down. It isn't a shame because we got Joe Grant out of it. Do you know what I mean? I'm a bit sort of schizophrenic about this, but they thought, no, we got to have a thicker female character, and it's a shame because I love Joe, and of course Joe was my first companion. But looking at it more objectively, you think, isn't it a shame that they couldn't have given more mileage to the intelligent scientist who was on a level with the Doctor, and because it does work. You don't need somebody just saying, but I don't understand, Doctor. You can have some, because it worked with, much as I'm not the biggest fan of the later Tom Baker years, but it worked with Romana. Why couldn't it have worked with Liz Shaw?
Worked with Zoe just before that.
Yeah, but I guess you had Jamie for the
you got Jamie there. Oh, Doctor, what's that? Yeah. But I think it's
but then you've got the Brigadier there for that, haven't you? In a way,
it's to underestimate both the audience and to underestimate the character of the companion. But then there we are. We're in the early 70s. What do you expect? And we got Joe Grant out of it. But I think it's interesting that I think the Jon Pertwee, Caroline John relationship worked very well, and I like it. And they're four of my favorite stories for all sorts of reasons, but that's one of them. I think that relationship works brilliantly.
I think the Silurians is when it's at its strongest. I think.
Say again, Ben.
I think the Silurians it's at its strongest because you've got them both trying to work on
working together. Yeah. Well, I think it works. It works in each of the stories in different ways. I think immediately there, I love that when they're together in the laboratory, when he's explaining to her, when they find they chase off the Auton from Seeley's place, and he's holding the globe. Did ever an actor playing the Doctor look so instantly comfortable with that science fiction object as Pertwee with the energy globe there? I just think for me he's instantly the Doctor as much as any other Doctor. In fact, the only other Doctor that comes close for me in terms of being bang on it right away is Matt Smith in The 11th Hour, who's probably banged on it more than anybody else has ever been. That's a hot take for you.
Both in the name of the channel, aren't they, Ben?
Yeah,
well, there you go.
Started hospital,
nothing but praise for Matt Smith sort of hitting the ground running, and that's such a strong story as well. But I think Pertwee in his quieter and much more. My mother, who was a great connoisseur of acting performances, and she used to sort of she'd say about Pertwee, he's so relaxed, and that's which is I think the quintessence of a really good acting performance is how relaxed the actor is and doesn't seem to be exerting themselves or straining for it. He's just so in it and so
It's
in
just
it.
the naturalism, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you don't see it.
And that's what's remarkable about it. This bloke who was known for putting on comedy noses and mustaches and voices and everything, and hasn't done this before, as far as I know, and I've seen a lot of his work and a lot of his films. Instantly has this huge sort of sense of a burden being lifted from his shoulders. Of, oh God, isn't it great to be able to do this? And I can do it really well, and I really want to get this right, and has no trouble getting it right. And there's things are refined. So most of the scenes and I don't have much of a problem with the Duc d'Orléans shower or the trying of the hats or the escape in the wheelchair. The only scene that looks like it's from a different tradition to me is when he's trying to get the TARDIS working and he comes out and there's all the smoke coming out of the TARDIS and he does that sheepish acting and sits on the chair. And it's sort of, I don't know whether it's trying to be Troughton-esque, but it looks a bit Wurzel Gummidge-ish to me. You know,
it's
and
like a naughty schoolboy who's got caught out, isn't he?
I'm sorry, I won't do it again. You know, and it's a little bit sort of.
You get a little bit in Terror, don't you?
In Terror of the Autons.
Yeah, you get a similar bit when the TARDIS does exactly the same thing.
But there, it's not sort of it's coded in terms of his abrasive anger. And he kicks the thing, and he's he's cross, which says, "Doctor, you're being childish." And he says, "What's wrong with being childish? I like being childish."
And that story is what he's taken out his anger quite a bit on the Brigadier, isn't he? Whereas here, it's almost as if, he,
that feels like the Pertwee Doctor, in a bad moment, who's sort of exposed himself to Joe as being petulant, and
I think it works very well for that story that it's mirroring him with the Master there, isn't it? You've got this very cranky man who's being rude to all his friends around him, and yet he's the good guy. Meanwhile, you've got the Master who's being suave and charming, but he's off trying to kill everyone.
Yeah. It's a nice irony, isn't it? Yeah, the doctor's abrasive and cross, and the Master's. I think there might be, not having got to it, I can't be more specific, but there might be a nice sequence of juxtaposition of scenes of the Doctor being like that, unpleasant, and cutting to a scene of the Master being absolutely the opposite, and the irony, of course, being that never judging a book by its cover, etc.
Another brilliant stroke of writing by Rob Holmes.
Well, again, that's this is the era that discovers Robert Holmes, and it's difficult looking back at the Crotons and I'm very fond of the Crotons, partly because it was a Five Faces story, but also it's David Maloney makes a huge amount out of very, very difficult material and circumstances.
I think even then you see potential there because he's really writing the story around the characters. He's like with the high brains and the low brains. He's using that to the advantage with Jamie and Zoe being from very different backgrounds.
I haven't tried to analyze the Crotons in terms of what it has in common with later Robert Holmes stories, but it'd be an interesting sort of exercise, wouldn't it?
The
Crotons is just the Crotons to me. It's just, and it's wonderful in the ways it's wonderful, and it's not so wonderful in the ways it's not. But it is curious, isn't it? And it was.
I think it's been pointed out that the Mysterious Planet, what ended up being his last full script, is sort of a remake of the Crotons in a way, with a powerful robot there trying to harvest intelligent minds.
What's it called? That robot?
I can't. Jaffro. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm shamefully not as familiar with the Trial of a Time Lord. Is it Trial of a Time Lord, isn't it?
It is. It's the opening of that.
It's a painful fact because that whole period is difficult. But and certainly from the Space Pirates, but no, you get Spearhead from space, which is so sort of wonderfully darkly sardonic, I think Channing is one of the most unnerving antagonists in the
Was that wonderful shot through that sort of corrugated glass?
The corrugated glass, yeah, with his eyes sort of myriads of eyes, is so uncanny, and that great. Again, you see that confrontation scene between the Doctor and Channing in episode 4. Pertwee so beautifully relaxed in that scene. What are the I've got when my son wasn't allowed to watch Doctor Who when he was very little, I used to make these big books, as he called them. Well, I just called them cards, where I would introduce him to episodes. So we'd have you can see this.
Oh wow.
So we got I can't get this in. Where's the bloody camera? There we are.
It's the,
you see that?
This planet is a saying that it is never too late.
That's right. And so and there's the thing. And then so
it's wonderful.
I'm not human, and on this planet there's a saying that it is never too late. And then I've done, but there is more to come. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. You got a little coming soon there.
Well, there's more to come. And then there was this. Not only that, she gets attacked by this, and I got a phone call from Sam's mum. This is hilarious about the effects of this program. He'd seen that photograph, and she goes, "Sam's had a really bad nightmare because of that photograph."
In isolation, it does look quite terrifying.
I mean, even in the story, I think it is quite terrifying.
Yeah.
I think I told you the story about how he'd had a nightmare about something else from something else, some sort of cartoon monster, and he said, "But they're not really scary monsters." And I said, "What else scary?" He went, "Doctor Who monsters." So, but you're not seeing but seeing the photographs, and they were scary enough, And then, of course, he did see the stories, and he absolutely loved them. The scary music and all the rest of it. But it's interesting. Again, it can never be reiterated often enough how these things made 50, 60 years ago remain so powerful is remarkable. And the fact that you could see that. I think those of us who'd gone through the wilderness years thought, okay, it's been consigned to television history, and people will look back and go, "Well, that's quaint and charming." But the idea that a younger generation could come along and, okay, the series has been revived, but they could watch the program and realize or feel that it was the same program and not think, "Oh, look at that creaky old crap that used to be Doctor Who. We don't feel any relationship to it." The people of your vintage should see the revived series and then watch the old stuff and feel as enthusiastic about it. I think, if that's not to overstate it, as you are about the revived stuff is astonishing.
I mean, if anything, the classic series scared me more at the time. Like, I think I've told you before about Two Sidemen, how that definitely gave me nightmares. But I sort of love that thrill of it as well. There's a funny relationship with being scared when you're a child, isn't there?
Oh, well, it's they're my favorite memories. My favorite memories are my very favorite memory of all time. Odd though it may be, is that's the first memory from the Sea Devils. Because it's just so powerful. It's almost like a drug, isn't it? That sort of the thrill of Doctor Who, and getting anxious through the football results as it was getting imminent, as it was coming closer, and the program that was on, whatever program was on just before it, with oh Christ, where's the bloody phone? There it is, the phone.
Okay.
Yes, so there's this trailer from Three Doctors, which mentions the program before. It's just your heart would start beating very, very heavily and fast remembering the football results, West Bromwich Albion 3, Wolverhampton Wanderers 0, and hearing that voice, and it's going, oh, that means Doctor Who's going to be on very, very shortly, or it was Basil Brush. Lots of Pertwee was Basil Brush. The season 12 was Tom and Jerry. There was always a Tom and Jerry cartoon before, and it was new. When you say to him, "What time is it?" She said, "It's 5 o'clock." When she said it was, you knew that it was going to be on soon. There was something magical about 5 o'clock, and they'd said, "It's now. It's the news at 5 to 5 or whatever it is." And you go, "Oh God, 5 o'clock meant Doctor Who was coming on very, very soon." And it was throughout the Pertwee, I think probably most of the classic series. It was fun. Was the first episode 5:15, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Unearth the Child. And it was only thanks to White House's onslaught saying it can't be on that early that I think it's season 14 it finally gets over 6 o'clock. It's 6:15 and it's 6:20, and that kind of sticks around for a while. But it was always sometime after 5, 6:50. Sorry, 5:15, 5:20, 5:45 at the latest. Yeah.
Michael Feeney says, always thought Jon Pertwee was a very underrated actor. Doesn't get the credit he deserves for me.
Yeah, well, I think that the problem in those days was that typecasting was a thing, wasn't it? And if you got they didn't think, oh, he's really popular in that, maybe he can do that. They thought, no, everyone will just think he's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And so you get pigeonholed.
John struggled for a while until Wurzel Gummidge, didn't they?
Yeah, and I
don't think he ever shook the image off because he was always in the velvet jacket and frilly shirt.
Yeah. And I've no idea what his range was as a straight actor outside of Doctor Who. It's difficult to tell. I think there were certain actors, there are certain parts waiting for certain actors. And there's just a moment of remarkable synchronicity, serendipity, if you like, that it happens at just the right time for the right actor. Like, Ron Moody turned it down. And there's an alternative universe where Ron Moody, who's my friend Tony, who I mentioned earlier on, knew Ron Moody quite well. He said, the biggest regret of my life, Ron Moody said, was turning down Doctor Who, particularly because when he's offered it in 1969, he's just done the film of Oliver, which was huge. He's just done a major motion picture and won, I believe, awards. I can't remember if it was an Oscar, but he certainly got a lot of awards for it. And he said, and I felt I was too big for television. And he said, and that was a moment I should have grabbed it and thought, no, the movie career isn't necessarily going to happen. There's this. And it was a huge regret he had, Ron Moody, that he didn't, at this particular moment, take Doctor Who. Because his career, then his movie career, didn't happen in the way that he'd hoped it would. So we got this parallel. I've no doubt that Ron Moody would have been a fantastic Doctor Who, but and because he was an extraordinary actor. But we wouldn't have had Jon Pertwee. And then he turned it down before Tom Baker, as a number of other people did. None of the other candidates who turned it down before Tom Baker, I think, sound right for it. But there were a number of people who turned it down, and Tom Baker is somebody who, particularly in the early years, is remarkable as Doctor Who, but I've never seen him be that remarkable. He was born to play the Doctor, Tom Baker, and he's absolutely remarkable and perfect. Certainly in the first 3 years, and then of course it grows, and it's a different thing. And it's because a whole 7 years of it, different sort of manifestations. But similarly with Pertwee, in a way, although he's done loads and loads of stuff before, and all the radio stuff and the cameos he does and other things. But then he finds stardom as Doctor Who and both of these actors, and that's the magic combination with both of them. Both of them play it as themselves more than any other actors that had ever done it.
Yeah.
The famous "Who the hell's that?" Play it as yourself, and of course this was something.
Sid Sutton, wasn't it? Who had that conversation with?
Sid Sutton designed the title sequence for the for
Sean Sutton.
Oh, Sean
Sutton. Sid Sutton Starfield. Sean.
Sarah Sutton, Nissa.
It's that's right. And Sutton Coldfield or something else. There's this, which I've known all my life. This quotation. I hadn't really found myself before Doctor. That's the interview with him, and they're all rather poetic. And it's full of poetic phrases. This the Bill Hartnell one. I was laughed at and mocked for my faith in Doctor Who, and I'm mellowed. These are all phrases that are so imprinted in my consciousness because pretty much almost as soon as I could read properly, I was reading this thing, the Holy of Holies, but. Hadn't really found myself before Doctor Who, and Tom Baker. They both play themselves, and they're brilliant at it. And it was just marvelous that they both had this extraordinary chance to play this augmented version of their own personalities, which is wonderful for them and wonderful for us. But yeah, it was bloody hard for both of them afterwards. Jon Pertwee was fortunate enough to eventually find that Southern Television would pick up Wurzel Gummidge when everybody else was turning it down, and it must have been hell to go through watching Tom Baker becoming a bigger rating success than he had been as a Doctor. And then, but I mean, Tom Baker's career is it must again. Hugely disappointing. He said he thought it was going to be golden after Doctor Who, and it wasn't. And he one or two other successes, and he's remained Tom Baker, the Fourth Doctor. He's defined by it in a way. He never found another role like Jon Pertwee did, which was as successful. Because I think Pertwee was fortunate in that Wurzel Gummidge was, as if it not in his mind, more successful.
I think that's more of his baby. I think he probably,
because as he says, I share Doctor Who with other actors, but I share Wurzel Gummidge with nobody, or he didn't. It's fascinating.
I suppose as well because it's a heightened version of their own personality. When people just have a conversation with them, they will instantly sort of see them as their character in some way, won't they? So that probably made it much more difficult when it came to just the audition and casting process. That while interacting, people just see the Doctor in them, whereas other actors like Patrick Troughton and Peter Davison,
who are more character actors,
they're a bit much more.
Although but I mean, I think there's so much of the Doctor in Patrick Troughton or Patrick Troughton in the Doctor. He seems quite similar to that, but he played so many other different parts before it and went on to play and was that sort of chameleon actor where he completely change himself. And in quite serious drama, Pertwee had been known for comedy. Tom Baker was not unknown before Doctor Who, but was I suppose you'd call him a jobbing actor who'd done horror films and fantasy films.
Wasn't anywhere near on the level that John or
was the furthest from being a star as anybody, Tom Baker, when he arrived in it. But it's odd with Tom Baker, isn't it? Because when you see him playing ordinary human beings, he's too big to play on. There's something too extraordinary about him.
There's a look in his eyes, isn't there, all the time?
He seems other always, doesn't he? And so he's very difficult to cast in something naturalistic.
Yeah, he's also very much the center of everything, isn't he? Like your eye's always going to be drawn to him if he's in a.
Yeah, he's mesmerizing whatever he's doing, and that isn't always what you want.
Nah.
But people can be mesmerizing in a naturalistic sort of way. You can. Michael Caine is mesmerizing, but when he's playing somebody who's quite an ordinary person, but he's got this strange intensity. For want of another, for many other examples, but Baker just seems to be this
a different
bizarre
kind of intensity. Yeah, it's a bizarre intensity.
Yeah, Yeah, he's strange. Whatever he's playing.
Makes walking
Incapable.
through a door interesting.
Oh yeah. Anyway, we're not talking about Tom Baker.
No, not. We'll do that in January, perhaps.
Well,
Maybe, yeah.
There's plenty of opportunities to talk about. I've got a little. Anyway, it doesn't matter what I've got. Carry on. What's next?
I mean, I was going to say one of the things that probably went in Jon's favour as well was that he joined the show in a time of relative stability that's almost unheard of at this point.
Jon Pertwee did. You mean Tom?
Jon
stability.
Yeah,
was about to be cancelled.
Ushering in of stability now. Like I think his era as a whole is one of the most stable. Certainly when he joined, it was very precarious.
When he joined, it was about to be cancelled. And of course, when we were discussing this the other week, not only was it about to be cancelled when he joined, but as he was filming, and still when they completed Inferno, there was a huge question mark hanging over whether there was going to be a season 8. And Barry Letts was trying to find the replacement right up to recording and beyond season 7. This thing called Snowy Black, this thing about an Australian drover who finds himself in London hoping to have this huge inheritance or whatever it is. This completely and utterly discrepancy as to what Doctor Who was. So Pertwee's filming that whole season 7.
Would it have been the whole of it, or would it have been?
It's the whole of it. They finished recording it, and the question mark was still hanging over it, and it was literally the beginning. Well, and in spite of the fact that Inferno, the ratings for Inferno were diabolical for the time, they didn't have the faith in the replacement series. They thought, well, let's just give it another series, and thankfully, Letts and Dix pulled out of that for season 8. But it was
for season 7 that they had that, and it was around.
No,
season
it's
6.
throughout season 8. He's Letts is looking for something else, and he said, and there was a period of time after they'd shot it, and I think even to the extent of them had it gone out when that last rather cheesy scene with Pertwee and Courtney, could well have been the very last scene ever. So the question mark and the fact that those ratings, because it was summer, because the 7-part format was too long. 7 units of 25-minute drives is too long for an audience. However inventive you are, and they were. With the weekly audience, it was however many polls it comes to top off these days or whatever for fans. That's too long to stretch out audience patience.
Even if it saves the money on sets.
Even if it says, and that's good. So it's glorious, isn't it? When I was watching Ambassador of Death the other day, I was thinking, because the benefit of this is, when they find the capsule, the Recovery 7, and then. Normally in any other Doctor Who or probably a lot of other dramas, you would cut from when that was there to when it was in the studio. But you see the crane arriving and lifting it up and everything, don't you? Which of course is the benefit of the long form, but also the benefit of the fact you've got the budget to get all that hardware there.
Yeah. Well, I think that one went over budget.
It did. It was. Well, it's interesting that both Michael Ferguson and Timothy Coombe only did 2, didn't they? Michael Ferguson had done War Machines before, hadn't he? But yeah, they both overspent. But I still mesmerizes me on Ambassador of Death. The helicopter, the fight scene.
I guess it's the first flare of what the era could be with Una.
It's wonderful to see that season. And it's how serious it is, and how sober it is, and how austere it is.
There's a grip to it, which I don't think any other series has.
No, it's not retained. There's the only story that comes
briefly in Mind of Evil.
In Mind of Evil, Mind of Evil's is sort of like a sequel to season 7, isn't it? Well, you've got Don Horton's writing it, and it got that feel, hasn't it? That gritty feel. With and again huge expense at Dover Castle.
You've got quite a few
also...
gunfights, haven't you? Throughout.
Very. That I was. Yeah, no, because when I saw last time I saw that I watched a little bit of it before today again. But all that sort of it's very brutal, isn't it? It's very like, something from a more adult drama of the time. I think as is a lot of season 7.
Yeah. I think Benji Clifford put it best. Doctor Who season 7 feels like Doctor Who if it was made by ITV.
Yeah, Thames Television, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, at it's interesting, isn't it? A slightly later time. Yeah, because at that time it's a difficult thing saying ITV, because ITV you immediately think it's going to be naff and crap, and dodgy in all sorts of other ways.
Yeah. Something only a grandmother would love.
Yeah, made by Euston Films, headed by Verity Lambert a few years later. Sort of, in Sweeney time. But as the Derek Ware, said about Ambassadors, as he said, it's been said many times, that shootout sequence in episode 1 of Ambassadors is as good as any scene in the Sweeney, if not better.
Just got Nick Courtney flinching every time he fires.
Well, it's funny because that scene was when we went to see the at the BFI in 1983, in October 1983. They showed the whole of the Demons, but they showed selected episodes from different Doctors. And the first episode they showed of the Pertwee stuff was Ambassadors of Death, episode 1. And not only was I remember the strange thing was watching that first episode of Ambassadors of Death and thinking, kind of blown away by how good the model work was, with the homage to Bark or Whiter Shade of Pale, the link up, homage to Stanley Kubrick, that sort of slightly erotic sort of link up with the music.
It's like a dance in space almost.
Which is it's owing to 2001, also owing to Doctor Strangelove with the copulating fueling of one aircraft and another, but the upside down shooting of the astronaut Van Leyden going and using the video disc to slow it down. In 1983, bear in mind we just watched season 20. I'm watching episode 1 of Guns. This is light years ahead of anything that's in the John Nathan Turner's that season we just watched. We just watched King's Demons a few weeks before, and I'm watching episode 1 of Ambassador, thinking this is like sort of not a few notches below Stanley Kubrick. What went wrong?
Yeah.
And that shootout, and my dad going, bloody hell, that was a bloody good shootout, my dad being impressed by the Demons, because he was a fan of Hammer horror films and Dennis Wheatley and stuff like that. And he said, this is really bloody good, this Doctor Who, this old Doctor Who, isn't it? I was going, yeah, it is, isn't it? I'm feeling really pissed off about the Nathan Turner, Peter Davis stuff, watching this going, oh God, maybe, because I think we thought this was rose-tinted spectacles about the 70s stuff. Maybe it wasn't as good. But I remember walking across Waterloo Bridge kind of dazed, like I was on acid or something after watching that episode 1 of Ambassador and a few of the other episodes, or re-seeing bits of the Hinchcliffe stuff. You're going, Jesus Christ, what went wrong after 77? It all went to shit overnight.
Yeah, I think there's a line
in Fawlty Towers where he's complaining about Harold Wilson. You go, bloody Wilson, shaking his fist out. I remember walking across Waterloo Bridge going, bloody Williams, or bloody Whitehouse. I mean, all sorts of things came into it, but it was very strange seeing Letts and Hinchcliffe stuff in the early 80s. And just thinking, it's aesthetically. What's that line of Clifford Jones? Aesthetically, morally, and something right.
Yeah.
But no, it's aesthetically and in so many other ways, intellectually, imaginatively. To my mind, at the time, and there are people who love all other eras, but it just seems to be sort of, on a higher level.
I mean, I was saying earlier about how, behind the scenes wise, it's a stability that Doctor Who hadn't seen for quite a while up till this point, because you had a lot of script problems with Bryant and Sherwin falling through and such. You had almost a revolving door of producer and script editor for a while throughout the later Hartnell and Troughton years. And then finally, after Spearhead, it's nailed down. It's Letts and Dix, it's Baz and Tell for the next 5 years consistently. And I think you can feel that calmness. You can feel you've got two people who get on running the show.
Yeah.
You've got a lead who's getting on with everyone. It's all sailing much more smoothly.
It's that sort of that thing you can't legislate for. Barry Letts becoming producer, and as Terence Dix always said, rather like how he came up with the concept of the immortality in the Five Doctors. If you want it, then you're disqualified from the qualities you need to have the thing. So if you want immortality, if you want to be a producer, then you're not going to be good. The reason why Barry Letts, he said, was such a good producer was because he didn't want to be a producer. Because if you want that much power, then you shouldn't have it. Barry didn't want it. He wanted to be a director, and that made him the great producer that he was. Partly because he was as talented as he was, and as diffident, and as gentle, and as patient, and as quiet, and as strangely Buddhistic, and all the rest of the things that he was. But for him to meet Terence Dix and for them to get on, and then to be so different in so many ways, politically at variance in so many ways. But as Terence said, I just wanted to get a really exciting adventure show on Saturday nights. He wanted to get something. He said, but what's it about, Terence? So if I stopped him being too pious and he stopped me being too gung-ho about making it exciting, and we pulled each other sort of in a good direction between us, And
there's a happy medium, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great strengths of that era is that you've got two sensibilities that are different in many ways, but together they create something that's rather wonderful because they're different, because they're not the same sort of person, and they haven't got the same priorities. And if you've got somebody who's bit more left wing, somebody who's a bit more right wing, then you get a very, very sort of rounded and balanced view of things, rather than something that becomes totally sermonizing, or something that becomes totally sort of ratings hungry, whatever it is, and similarly with Hinchcliffe and Holmes, you've got this wonderful sort of meeting of sensibilities that works. They've also on their side, and in people like Graham Williams' defense, certainly in the early 70s, you still got the benefit of the relative economic happy
golden
situation.
Age.
It's the last. They get the last bite of the golden age. So it's 73, everything, but I think it's still sort of affecting the budgets into Hinchcliffe's era, and it's Williams who gets the SHIT end of the stick in every conceivable way, and I feel sorry for him that he was
very forehand.
He's the first producer who's told. That's the thing. The difference of ethos is in the 60s and still in the early 70s. Producers, writers, directors were allowed to go away and make what they wanted to make, and nobody interfered. Hugh Green was very laissez-faire about, if he had faith in the people, he let them make what they wanted to make. And that was certainly so for Letts. Letts made Doctor Who in his image. Letts, and it's Letts and Dix's vision, as it is with Hinchcliffe and Holmes, as it had been for Verity and Whittaker and Innes Lloyd and Jerry Davis and Bryant and Sherwin. Williams is the first person who said, you've got to do this. You can't make it like that. It's got to be like this. Do as you're told. And that's, unfortunate for him and unfortunate for the programme, I think. But, you can't change the history of Doctor Who, not one line. And it's fascinating.
We did get some great bits, as much as we would love for it all to be incredible. I think we've got.
Well, as Rob
enough
Shearman
good
said, the
stuff out
most
of
the most
it.
fascinating eras of Doctor, because he said, everyone can praise, Philip Hinchcliffe or Barry Letts stories, till the cows come home. But the fascinating ones to actually talk about or make documentaries about the periods when it was going wrong and how fascinating that is, socio sort of media politically or whatever it is, so because it is fascinating.
Yeah, you still got to have entertainment to be found there through behind the scenes stuff that they do now.
And there's always good stuff because the format is so strong that there's always good stuff, and obviously there are kids watching that who are their favorite stories, and I don't want to take that away from anybody. No. I wouldn't want to take away from Ben that he loves Destiny of the Daleks.
Each their own, isn't it? Really?
No, but I can see why, if you hadn't seen or at a particular point in your childhood, that's what you see. And it's like Downey was doing the one about Death of the Daleks was saying that when he was of the age when he saw Destiny of the Daleks, he imagined. This is the thing, I suppose, the limited budgets of these things enable is the child's imagination to fill in the gaps. He imagined the battle between the Mavellans and the Daleks to be like Battlestar Galactica or whatever you like, Star Wars or whatever it was, and so the child's imagination is there. This is it's all so subjective and so personal.
I suppose now we also have the benefit of almost a bird's eye view of it. Like, we aren't just looking at it in isolation, whereas for you,
exactly.
living through those
times, I was stuck there in the late 70s. Yeah.
And he didn't even have the option to stick on a VHS, Blu-ray, DVD and revisit the good old days. You were just stuck with it's either this.
Well, we were very lucky. My generation, people who are my age, were very lucky in one way and very unlucky in another way. In that we were so lucky to get Letts and Dick's Pertwee from the age of 3, 4, 5. We're so lucky to be there at the right age, 6, 7 for the transition to Tom Baker. So lucky to be 8, 9 in the Hinchcliffe years. But then, the frustration of going from that Hinchcliffe phrase of, as he said about Doctor Who is a in his mind an adult program that's suitable for children to watch. I, at the age of 9, when I saw K9, thought, no, that's for little kiddies. That's a kiddies character, and a pretty simple kiddies character at that. I don't want this. When it was repeated, Invisible Enemy, that summer, and I think it was there were 2 stories. It was Invisible Enemy and Sunmakers. And I taped it off the time. And I can't find these tapes. I wish I could find this. And it was at the end of Invisible Enemy. And there was this moment when, when Professor Marius says, I hope his TARDIS trained.
Yeah.
Under my breath. And it was transgressive for 2 reasons. You can hear on the tape me going, piss off, a 9-year-old kid. It was transgressive because I was actually messing up my tape of this story. And I felt bad about that. Also, I shouldn't be swearing, and I didn't want my parents to hear it. But it was a mark of how strongly I felt about K9 coming on board the TARDIS. I go, no, get that bloody thing out of the TARDIS. Jon Pertwee wouldn't have had that. And Tom Baker wouldn't have had that a few years ago. And I didn't know much about William. Wouldn't know much about William Martin. We could imagine William Martin would have kicked the shit out of it. Or whacked his head off with his whacked his head off with his stick. No, even as a 9-year-old, I thought, no, this is talking down to me and everybody else. This isn't the program. This isn't right. This is going absolutely the wrong direction. And I was bloody 9,
Whereas for me and Ben, I think K9 always seems like part of almost the DNA of Doctor Who in a way, because
really
he's always been there since we first watched it.
But can you imagine Pertwee with K9?
No.
Can you imagine Inferno with K9? Can you imagine the Green Death with K9? Can you imagine the Sea Devils with K9?
He's very specific to Baker.
Yeah, but he's not. Can you imagine him in Pyramids of Mars or the Seeds of Doom? or the
I
arc
think
in
we
space.
sort of have a memory cheats, or at least I do, of
You think
him being with the Fourth
Sarah
Doctor and
and
Sarah,
yeah,
because you've got that in the new
That was
series.
well, I
when she
remember
comes
a few
back.
weeks ago when we did that first one, and you said, "Oh, what was your first memory of K9 and Company?" And I remembered. I remember being appalled that we were bringing Sarah Jane back, and there was this series that wasn't called Sarah Jane; it was called K9 and Company. I'm thinking, why is it called K? What the hell's she doing with that bloody thing? You know. An opinion I think that Tom Baker shares, actually, because he despised Kane.
Well, he wanted a talking cabbage, so I don't know what would have been.
Well, I think he was bereaved about Liz leaving, you know, and didn't really want anybody, and was expressing how, you know, anything, even a vegetable, would be better than anything else. But no, it suddenly felt like it was being made for people far younger than me, and I was 9, you know. And I despised K9, and I later on I suppose I came to respect the actor John Leeson, but also
I mean, Tom always really got along well with John Leeson, didn't he?
He got on well with John Leeson, but he hated the character, you know. But
did he get on with David Briley at all?
I don't know much about that.
I think that was probably Tom at his most difficult, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Season 17. No, it felt like it was. I remember this kid telling me about K9. He said, "You know, they're gonna have a robot dog in Doctor Who." Rob Ramsey. We were in the playing field. And I thought he was joking, and then I saw a newspaper. Like, oh my god, what? And horrified by it, and continue, and never stopped being horrified. I'm so glad when they got rid of the bloody thing. And of course, the other ironies about the thing is that, you know, it was supposed to be about making the thing less violent, but the thing's a bloody gun on wheels. That was, you know, so the Doctor's permanently carrying a gun. But like, you know, that sort of way that people kill people by remote control or whatever, you know, in modern wars.
The drones. It's always like disassociation from violence, isn't it? When it's like, when it doesn't look like a stereotypical gun.
How the ironies exfoliate. Anyway, we're miles away from Jon Pertwee.
Oh yeah, we stop, don't move.
Stop, don't move. Yes. So, what was the other thing we were supposed to say? Now listen to me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Where were we? We haven't got beyond Spearhead from space, for God's sake.
Should we do a quick fire on some of these stories?
Yeah, we could do.
So it's like in the Demons, we're hopelessly lost.
Is that a line from the Demons?
I think when, Joe's got the map the wrong way around, and they've gone.
Let's do quick fire on each story. Okay, so Spearhead from space, remarkable debut. Pertwee, for me, hits the ground running with the only sort of mild exception, I like it anyway, is what I call the Wurzel Gummidge scene. But in his relationship with the Brigadier, in his relationship with Liz Shaw, and his relationship with his standoff with Channing, and also the fact that his hair's the right length in Spearhead, and it's because
swooshed over.
For me, I want his hair the same length as it was in the first story I ever saw, which is the Sea Devils. Then he's suddenly in the Silurians, it's all very short and straight.
But it kind of alternates in Spearhead, like location-wise, you've got the booth on, and then when it's sort of towards the end, you've got it sort of swept over a bit.
Yeah, it's about the right length anyway. But and the charming last line, John Smith. So let's move on to any more about Spearhead before we go. What time is it, by the way?
It is 9:30 currently.
Okay,
we're all right.
An hour and a half, perhaps.
We're fine. Do you want to look at the chat for a moment?
Yeah, we can.
We did.
I'll tell you what. You do that. I'm going to use another room momentarily.
That's quite all right.
No,
yeah.
Yeah, so we got a wonderful £5 super chat from the time, or $5, sorry, super chat from the Timescales. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
What is the best way to contact Mr. Noonan? I would love to have an opportunity to interview him on my channel. Thanks, Grego/Timescales. Well, we'll put that to
we'll
Steve
put that to Steve
when he gets back. But yeah, I mean, for us, it was more he got in contact with us,
which is
wonderful. So that's something for him to get back to you on. But yeah, thank you very much for the $5 there.
Yeah, we really appreciate it all. It all helps us out. It helps us out. Keeps the lights on.
Joe Bowers said, I don't think Tom really knew David Brierley that well, as he never came to rehearsals.
Okay.
I suppose if he's just got to sit there and read the line later on, then yeah, that would make sense. Whereas John Leeson took the extra effort, I suppose, to actually be there for the rehearsals and such. But yeah, I suppose also maybe it's partially down to the production at the time being quite hectic, isn't it? Probably a reflection of that in some ways. What else we got here? Michael Feeney said, really enjoying this great discussion, lads. Brilliant stream. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. It's not over yet. We've got plenty more to cover. Another 23 stories and possibly the Flying Doctors as well. As a little bonus.
Time sales set there. The time scales, said the Pertwee era is one of my favourites. Agreed.
It's the most consistent the show has ever been. There's no stinker. There's no sort of underworld. There's like even the mutants and Time Monster gets a bad rap when really they shouldn't. And I think because we've got the Blu-ray, I think people are seeing it in a new light. Because the Time Monster's sort of the last full unit family, isn't it? It's for the last hurrah with everyone all together, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'd say Philip Hinchcliffe era has higher highs, but also has lower lows, whereas the Jon Pertwee era is very strong and consistent.
It's a steady ship, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's remarkably consistent, yeah. Can I take this opportunity to express my sympathies and apologies to any great K9 fans out there, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And actually, that was how I felt when I was 9. I don't feel, although I did sort of, I somehow was possessed by my 9-year-old self a moment ago. And I was incandescent about it, because I'm much more sort of benign towards that era, and it goes through so many phases, and it's fascinating, as I keep saying, to meet people who that's their favorite era, and I love having conversations with those people, And at some point very soon, I'm going to be doing a podcast with somebody whose one of their favorite stories is Warriors of the Deep, which is that in itself is fascinating. So. There are no wrong opinions. There's just obviously subjective, strong feelings about things. And if you grow up with something that's in a particular way and is delivering so beautifully, I think this era, the Letts and the Hinchcliffes deliver stuff that's really sort of upping the game of the kids who are watching it, upping the game intellectually, imaginatively, linguistically. There's a richness of language and ideas, and imagination and intellectual content in this stuff that I think is magical. But then for many there are magical things about the Williams era, of course, and there are great moments, etc., in all phases of Doctor Who, and the quintessential sort of brilliance of the concept never goes away. But I do think it's important for people never to be afraid of saying what they think, and somebody to say to me, bollocks, I love that stuff. That story, that's one of the best stories ever made. You go, well, fine, that's your opinion. Let's have a talk about it, But I think it's very important people never to be afraid of what they think, and to be, I shouldn't say that because that might offend somebody. Well, you need to be big enough to hear other people's opinions and to take them on board or see that perspective. It's
inviting a discussion, I think, and not close it off and shoot it down.
Yeah. Anything come up from the chat?
We had a super chat from the Timescales asking, what is the best way to contact Mr. Noonan? I would love to have the opportunity to interview /
right.
chat with him on my
I would love
channel,
to. Yeah, no, absolutely. What is the best way for him to put his email somewhere that I can write, send him an email back, because that would be great. I would be delighted to do that.
There you go,
And thank you, Timescales. Yeah, no, I'd love to. It'd be brilliant.
Timescales also said, this is a great show. Glad to be able to support in a small way.
Appreciate that.
Well, it is. No, I'm very grateful to you two for enabling me to have this, because I enjoyed this as much as doing the work that I'm delighted to be doing. So enabling these fascinating conversations about this stuff that I grew up with and became obsessed by, and is sort of quite quasi-religious. I often think that it is the greatest television series ever made, in whatever phase it goes through. It's still the greatest, and it's still. I remember being at the National Theatre, and there was this young bloke, brilliant playwright, without embarrassing anybody by giving names, and I said, what were your greatest influences as a writer? And he said, Doctor Who. And I said, oh, what era? And I was expecting him, because I hadn't quite worked out how old he was, and he was talking about his Doctor was Sylvester McCoy. That's extraordinary.
Okay.
Every phase, the thing engages
a new generation,
a new generation of people whose minds are there to be, and mind, intellects, and imaginations are there to be stimulated, and it always
slave to the battle computer.
Is that what's that a reference to?
Remembrance.
Yeah. There you go. Is that the little girl that's John Lees?
Yeah.
Oh, we're back to John Lees again. Yeah. No. It's unparalleled probably in the history of television in the way that it's facilitated people's minds to grow in a positive way. Every end and turn. No doubt, people in the last 3 years of it, there will be people growing up that the Jodie Whittaker, the Chibnall stuff will have had exactly the same effect on them. That's brilliant.
Then
on it goes.
People again come along with David Tennant and
shooting go, and on it goes. Yeah. The show is king, as Christopher Hamilton Bidmead said.
Luke Pietnik said, ham-fisted bum vendors need not to take offence.
You ham-fisted bun vendor.
That's rather different connotation.
That's something else entirely. Moving swiftly on, we haven't even got as far. Moving swiftly on, we haven't even got to Terror of the Autons yet.
Moving swiftly on to Doctor Who and the Silurians.
Doctor and the Silurians. Okay, come on, lads. We're going to do. We're allowed. How many minutes are we allowed? Has anyone got a stopwatch? We're going to do because otherwise we've got a lot of stories to get through. How long have we got on each one?
We go 30 seconds for each part. If it's a 7-part, we get 3
oh
and a half
my God.
minutes. If it's a
30 seconds for each story.
30 seconds for each episode. So if it's a 7-parter, you get 3.5 minutes. If it's a 4-parter, you get 2 minutes.
I said that's. Oh yeah, you're the maths genius, aren't you? You're the Adric of the outfit, aren't you?
But will he know if he's right?
I mean, you
well, I don't know.
Different areas.
No. You took maths for GCSE, but you didn't say you passed. There we are. That's Terror of the Autons again.
A level, isn't it? This
general science.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. There weren't GCSEs in those days. It was O levels. I've just realised as the sun's gone,
courses, though.
The sun's gone down. I'm gradually being lit by this, which I was given to by the Daleks from the Amicus films. So,
are you sure it's not the Cybermen from The Wheel in Space?
It could be, or it might be the title. It could be the title sequence from The Tomorrow People, but we won't go back to that. The end title sequence. Doctor and Silurians, Ben.
One of my favourites of the era, because it was in the Beneath the Surface box set.
It was indeed, as was Warriors of the Deep.
Which it's not bad.
We'll talk about that another time. Well, where is the D? Yeah, okay, yeah.
I think the Silurians is such a great concept. You can believe that there's this civilization underneath.
Well, also this was Terence Dicks defying Mac Hulk's notion that there were only two stories: Mad Scientist and Invasion of Outer Space. He's bloody bugger me. He's right, and then he found, oh no, there's invasion from within, or rather, within claiming their rights. No, and it is a magnificent story. Yeah, come on.
Gives us Bessie, so top marks there.
Gives us Bessie. Yes. What's he singing?
Betsy.
What's he singing at the beginning?
I'm trying to remember now.
No, I'm not sure. I only watched this one today as well, or at least the first.
Oh, you watched it today?
Yeah, I went.
Not for the first time.
No, not for the first time. But I thought I've just seen Invasion of the Dinosaurs again. I've seen like the end towards the end of the year. I'll go back.
He's saying,
"'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did jar and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogroves and the mome raths outgrabe."
This is a literary reference. A very it's one of the greatest children's books.
Is it Wind in the Willows?
It's not, but you're a bit earlier than that. It's Edwardian. It's about, I think it's 1860s, and is sort of one of the most surreal pieces of children's fiction ever written. 2 books with a little girl as a central character.
Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, it's from Through the Looking Glass, which has been visited many times, of course, by Doctor Who. Yeah, it's called Jabberwocky. But yes, that's our first sight of Bessie, and then we were taken into the mysterious world of some strange caves in Delia, Derbyshire. And
Nix has said Kazoo's on standby.
Kazoo's capable. Beep 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 beep. Courtesy of Enid Blyton's nephew. His first foray into the Doctor Who world. What do we think of the incidental music?
I think it works well for the Silurians. I think it gives that
a very ancient, otherworldly feel.
I think that does. I think that's the Silurian aspect of the incidental music, which it works less well when he's doing unit music, which sounds. That sort of sounds like it's from Trumpton or something.
It's like an upbeat route march, isn't it? But not.
Yeah, it's not brilliant.
I think the best piece is when they're examining the globe of like how it.
Him and Liz.
Before. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's quite there. It's when that globe is on the Silurians' view.
Oh, right.
The more
right. Oh, I see what you mean. Not when they find the globe in the cabinet.
Yeah. And it's showing the world before the Great Continental Drift.
Are we? So have you finished with it, Ben? Or
I'm all good. Okay. I'm all good.
Luke,
I think it's a really enjoyable one. It's a cracking one for 7 parts. You got the plague coming in halfway through, which was oddly fitting around the beginning of COVID. You felt like a morbid desire to watch this one and Invasion of the Dinosaurs as well, to see those shots of empty London.
There's the Weetabix card from 1975. That was the last one I got, and I didn't get it. You always got Sea Devils and Daleks in the Weetabix packets, and I have a terrible admission to make now that you went up to the Co-op around the corner from us, and I actually opened packets and stole Weetabix cards out of other people's Weetabix packets. Yeah.
The fledgling flies the Co-op.
Those people didn't have recycling back then for you to pick through.
They didn't. They didn't have morals in the 70s either, or police forces. But
an auto policeman might have come after you.
No, there was it was because it began in April 1975. The Weetabix campaign, and so it went through I think, end of Genesis to after Revenge, and it was still in June. And I think it was in sometime just at the end of term. There was this girl, because people were going swapping these things. These were huge, these things, because we didn't have action figures. We had little these were so exciting. And Paul Dwan, I think I've already told a story about Paul Dwan, who's a director who made that terrible mistake of interviewing David Warner for a whole day without the dictaphone.
Oh
working.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was from Ireland. They didn't get Doctor Who in his part of Ireland, but he collected these Weetabix cards without knowing what they were in 1975. And I said, did you know any conception? He said, I had no idea I said, what did you think? They all lived on a farm or something, these characters? Anyway, the weird thing was handing him, he was quite drunk, and handing him a number of these, and now in his sort of 30-something hands, and he looked and he burst into tears. Oh, look, they're so small. Because he couldn't believe, because they seemed huge to him as a child. But of course, these tiny things, before action figures, it was just so exciting to have anything.
Shame they didn't continue into the Davison era. You could have had, you can't mend people.
You could, exactly. That's right. That's right. And rip them up.
Very funny.
Yeah, the Silurians, Doctor Who and the Silurians and the cave monsters.
I mean, it's sort of an added level to it over 50 years on with COVID as well, in that you have the anti-vaxxer Dr. Lawrence. Is it Dr. Lawrence? Or is it just
that Peter Miles?
Yeah.
Peter Miles' character. Well, there's one point in the story where he's saying, why should I waste my time having useless injections against an imaginary epidemic?
Oh, he does, doesn't he?
There's an added irony there now.
Yeah. My feeling about this
in the end
is very interesting. Talking about the development of Pertwee's, I agree with everything you said about the story. It's an interesting story, and it does, and I think it does sustain 7 episodes. I think the plague enables it to, doesn't it?
That's sort of like the mid boost, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
If it comes on part 5.
Is it part 5 that the plague arrives in it? Anyway, it doesn't.
It's cliffhanger is.
I never watch it and think this is too long. I think. In fact, I never watch any of them, the 7 parts, and think they're too long, except when I've got to try and make a deadline for something like this, and I'll try something to go through the whole lot. I love the 7 parters, but I think in terms of Pertwee's performance, there's a moment. It's the end of episode 3 when the Silurian comes. The Silurian's killed Mr. Mackay, which just means something to people who've seen Porridge.
Yeah.
And there's a doctor we never had, and Pertwee responds to the siren coming around the corner, and Pertwee does this. There's an extreme close up on his face, and I think Pertwee's at this point hasn't found the optimum way to later on, and I've talked about this so many times about how great I think Pertwee is at responding to a threat. That the look in his eyes demonstrates to you that this is the most terrifying thing in the universe, and that's what scared me as a kid. I think in that cliffhanger, he overdoes it. It's like something from a silent film. His eyes are too wide. His eyes are too sort of
buggy,
like proptosis. He hasn't quite found it yet. These are sort of quibbles or whatever.
You get it quite a bit in like the promotion of like the season 7, like the Radio Times stuff with the eyes.
Well, it looks great in that photo that I made that sort of thing for my son. It looks so arresting in that sort of,
the still photo
in a still photo. But it's melodramatic, isn't it? But it works for a photo in a scene and in a characterization that later, for my money, it's probably the most successful characterization of the Doctor in terms of its for want of a better word, realism. After this season, he never goes over the top again, with the possible exception of when he's being strangled by the telephone flex in Terror of the Autons, when he still has his propensity
You
to
sort
pull
of
those...
like can get away with that as
He's very
his
good at
eyes
the
are bulging
gurning.
out from being strangled.
Well,
You
yeah,
wanna be morbid.
but there's something about the gurning that he does when he's being strangled by the octopus in Spearhead from Space, and he does a bit of it. He does a bit of it when he's in the Silurians when they burn through the wall, and and he does a funny face there, and he does it. And the last time he does it is in Terror of the Autons. By the time he's experiencing the mind of evil, recollecting the horrors of Inferno, he's got it bang on the money there. When that cliffhanger, with the flames, when he's yeah, I'm overdoing it now. I can see myself overdoing it. He gets it absolutely right in Mind of Evil, and from then on, there's never a second when I think he's overacting, he's underacting. He's always absolutely bang on the money.
I suppose in the defense of the Terror of the Autons moment as well, he's got to act in reverse for that moment. Because the
didn't stop Bernard Archard in Pyramids of Mars. Walking backwards to be shot by the priest hole.
I suppose Silurians as well. You've got the fact that it's sort of like a cheap out of a resolution, isn't it? Where he just puts out his hands like, "Hello, are you a Silurian?"
Well, that's a difficult line.
Charm.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful way to get out of it. But like
that's the payoff of it. Yeah,
the diplomat, isn't it? Coming out.
Yeah.
I always think never judge a cliffhanger by its payoff. You know, the cliffhanger is in and of itself. And bear in mind, we used to wake a week for them. So you know, we would the enigma was suspended for all that time, and didn't matter how actually cheesily it was got out of. The strength of this cliffhanger is in and of itself something very special.
I mean, on to the next story. One of the greatest.
Good man. That's right. Move us along. Carry on. Yes.
Of Death, where he's leaning over.
Have we left Doctor Who and Silurians behind?
I think we've got to.
Good. Okay.
2 hours.
We've blown it up.
Keep that timing.
Yeah.
Keep that timing. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, you've got the wonderful cliffhanger where he's leaning over to James. You've got the
and it comes up behind
ambassador reaching over him, and that's sort of like one that is a bit of perhaps a dodgy resolution, but it doesn't take away from how iconic that image is as it goes into the credits, and that must have been a really strong image to leave people on for a week.
Yeah, I think that the cliffhanger is always going to be resolved in some sort of rather generic and cliched way. Maybe sometimes, occasionally, you know, there's an ingenious way out of it, but that's just in the nature of the contract we sign.
Yeah, it's always going to be a fake danger of some kind. We
want a cliffhanger, and we know that he's going to get out of it, and it doesn't really. You know, people say, "Oh, you know, it's such a cop out that Sarah falls onto the platform at the end of at the beginning of episode 3 of Genesis of the Daleks." Well, what else are you going to do? You're going to have a cliffhanger like that. You know, what is what? How else would you resolve that? But I'm delighted that I thought for a whole week I thought she was dead. You know, and then I was delighted when she wasn't. Doesn't matter.
A brilliant cliffhanger that gets around this in the Ambassador's Death is end of episode 2. Right, cut it open.
That's one of the best cliffhangers.
Because it's not.
It's the mystery box, isn't it?
There, exactly. It's not something. It's not something that is endangering you that you have to then obviate. It's what's going to happen next, isn't it? And it's
a plot-based one rather than a quick bit of danger.
Yeah, it raises the question. They're going to go over what's inside. You know, you might be disappointed by the fact that it's only a tape recording. But no, that's it's a cliffhanger that moves the story on, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, slight divergence from Third Doctor, but another cliffhanger that just come to mind like that is Horror of Fang Rock Part 3, where it's like, I thought I locked a creature out, but I've left it in with us. There's great ones like that, which aren't, the character in danger.
No, and and that plays
picture.
to that's probably the last fight, that the last great gasp of gloomy, melancholy Tom Baker, isn't it? You know, where it's sort of, it's so pulled back,
very sober, isn't it?
Yeah. With us, so chilling, isn't it? Brilliant. Yeah. That's one of my favorite of all time. What the hell lycanthropy's got to do with anything? I don't know, because that's werewolves. But anyway, let's not talk about another era altogether right now.
I mean, we sort of spoke a bit about ambassadors already, haven't we?
Yeah.
Huge.
All right. Well, I want to say that let's say a bit more about it. It gets it's unsung. Actually, people tend to rate it lower than the other stories in this season.
They put it in the frontier camp where it's a lot of get captured, escape.
Yeah, it may be my favorite story of season 7.
And they're all very strong contenders.
They're so strong, but I think probably the very strongest story, because it's got that Holmesian drive and the look of it being shot.
They're trying to give it its own identity with the twang, aren't they? And same with Inferno. They're trying to give each story their own sort of. This is.
Well, it invents the cliffhanger sting, which and that was the revelation at the BFI in October 1983. It's reading the notes that Jeremy Bentham had written, going, "Oh Christ, this is the first story they ever heard, that bloody thing," and what a way to introduce it, with a cold open. You know, and there were loads of other shows at the time which had cold opens, but it's very strange to see it in Doctor Who at that time, isn't it? To see the title sequence starts but then stops, and you've got a cold open. But also, I think, did this crop up? Because there's a question or a debate that Nick Briggs and I have had, where he says there is no such thing as a good. All CSO is always crap. I was going, no, there's some good uses of it. Well, the use of it as the screen, which we first see Van Leyden on at the Space Center. That works brilliantly.
Not John floating down from the little shuttle.
No, but I quite like the surrealism of that. Actually.
Yeah,
what's the little? Who's the Dutch scientist?
Van Leyden.
What D'Artagnan is it?
No, Van Leyden's the astronaut.
Oh, I see.
The one. It's Tartalian, isn't it?
Yeah, Tartalian.
He's supposed to be French. It's you are going up to rendezvous with a flying coffin.
Yeah.
Although he's English on location, has been pointed out many times. Get in, monsieur. Yeah. What about him?
Yeah, like that little screen. It works well when it pops up, but then when it
CSO
goes
works
down,
well.
he's still.
Oh, is he? Well, yeah.
He's not going down with it. It sort of ruins the illusion.
Not.
Sadly.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, but it's okay for screens. It's not so great for like mines, for instance,
or the insides of alien space.
Insides of anything, really. I don't mind that because it's in that sort of psychedelic area. But no, this story, I love everything about it. I love the all the location stuff. You've got loads of post-nuclear industrial Gothic visuals, haven't you? I finally realized what you meant when I rewatched this about you'd conflated one location with another, which is that sort of aerodrome, which is the first place that the aliens are kept. You'd conflated one location with another, Luke. Do you remember?
Yeah, the first place.
And I'd forgotten there were two locations where the aliens are kept. But all that looks so wonderfully bleak. And again, you know when they're doing Variant 3, there's all that sort of Quatermass 2 imagery. And the aggregate place where they hide the bodies, that's just a wonderful sort of gloomy, bleak 70s outlook as the camera pans across that to where all that gravel's coming down over the bodies. The shooting of the aliens against the sunlight behind them. So, Dudley Simpson's music, which is a treated flute arpeggio biddle-diddling, biddle-diddling, all that stuff is so sort of mystical.
Yeah, I think the music was the strongest of the Pertwee era, perhaps.
And you've got
Very
what this era does with so you're dealing with xenophobia or racism in inverted commas with General Carrington, but you're not demonizing the character. He is given his humanity. He's doing it because he's trying to protect us or whatever. He's trying to protect people. So that understanding of why people are afraid of the other is
it's almost
part
like
of
an attempt to explore PTSD as well, isn't it? With him having lost.
Well, there's that. There you go. There's that element to it as well. Yeah, that he's gone through that traumatic experience. But it's all part of the humanity of this era. That nobody is, like we were talking about with Stevens, your namesake, as I discovered, Luke, isn't demonized as a character. Carrington isn't demonized. There's always human beings are human and have good and bad in them. That's one of the sort of admirable things about this era.
Yeah. And what's the name of the crook who he's working with? Carrington's working. Regan, yeah. Even he's got a redeeming moment where he comes up with the idea to use the ambassadors to stop Carrington's plan at the end.
I hadn't thought of that. I sort of always branded him in the sort of irredeemable thug bracket. But there you go. Again,
you could say it's self-preservation in a way, isn't it? Because he immediately says afterwards, "You won't forget I thought of it."
With this era though, you've got Barry Letts saying to directors and all the cast that assemble, you treat this like it's a play for today. You treat this as like it's the important drama in TC1 that they're doing next door. And that's what you get with performances like that actor. He's called William Dysart. Is giving a performance that you wouldn't look out of place in any other hard-hitting, for want of a less boring phrase, gritty realism drama of the time or later. He's not. Nobody's acting like they're in children's television. No, none of the characters know they're in Doctor Who in inverted commas. You know what I mean? They're real
people.
Yeah, that's right. I think in other eras, the characters, there's a sort of an awareness. It might be a sort of whether the directive's coming down from above or not, or whatever it is, to take it less seriously, to treat it as something that's flimsy or silly or whatever it is. All those characters in that and so many, in most stories in this era, could be in anything else. They just happen to be in Doctor Who, and that's one of the things that I find impressive about it. What other Doctor Who stories William Dysart in? You'll never get it. I'll be surprised if you do. I'll send you a Mars bar. It's a Troughton one, but a missing one.
Not Fury from the Deep?
It's set in Scotland, and that's an end of the matter.
Highlanders.
Yes, it is, yeah. He's actually a Scottish actor. Are we moving on? Pertwee is brilliant in Ambassador to Death, and I think that might be the story where there isn't a single foot wrong.
Fully.
There's not a single foot wrong from then on, with the minor exception of the being strangled by the telephone wire and Church of the Autons. But when he arrives, comes up the lift, and I don't carry identity or whatever it is. Get your hands off me, and immediately the antagonism with Ralph Cornish. There was an actor called John Hopkins who's in his 20s when we were doing a show together, and he goes, I've never seen a Jon Pertwee Doctor Who. Can I see one? And just at that time, this had just come out, which is the VHS. The remarkable VHS, which keeps segueing from color into black and white because they hadn't colorized the whole thing. So it gave you, as I always think, the best of both worlds. You get, as those who 5% of the country saw it in color, but it keeps bleeding back into black and white and back again. And I put that on, and it was very late at night, and I kept saying at the end of every episode, "All right, have you had enough?" And he went, "No, Mike, this is amazing." He said, "I can't, but this is Doctor Who, and this was what, 1970?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "But this is streets ahead of loads of stuff that's on the telly now." And this was, I could tell you exactly when it was. It was about 2002, so it was before the show came back. 2002, 2003, whenever that came out. I was going, do you want it? He was going, no, and he was completely mesmerised by it. And we eventually the sun came up, and we went and got Bloody Marys in Hampstead for breakfast or something. And we watched the whole bloody thing. And I thought, oh, that's the power of this, isn't it? And that it's impressive how it sort of, I suppose, there are certain stories that are elevated beyond. There's certain stories, I've said this before, you wouldn't show to a non-fan.
No, you have to you have to be in first.
And you've got to be in, and they're full of remarkable, Stephen Moffat said, you know, 1 minute it's the silliest tinsel you've ever seen, and the next minute there's the greatest line or speech you've ever heard. But there's certain stories where you're getting the sort of what a normaloid person would expect of something that was a decent piece of drama, at the same time as you're getting the good writing and the good performances. And that was one of those occasions where I showed it to somebody and went, I can't believe this is amazing. This is like some really, really sort of decent piece of proper drama, you know. Have we finished with Ambassadors of Death then? But final shout again for Pertwee and Caroline John, who does all that chase. I love that chase stuff. With that's another aspect of it. All that
she gets to stand strong on her own, doesn't she? In this,
it gives her own agency, I think, within this.
A lot of strong wit as well. She's played off against characters like Regan.
Yeah. No, she's very impressive throughout the season, but most impressive in the next story. Should we move on to Inferno?
Well, Timescales has said this is making me want to binge watch the whole Pertwee era again. We're glad.
Well, we could always do a lot worse than binge watching the Pertwee era, can't we? I think. But it takes longer than you think. Because I'd hope
make sure you're not doing it on deadline time.
I'd hope to bloody binge watch it for this, but it's there wasn't enough time. I do have other things to do as well. Anyway, well, we can come back and talk about it again many times. So it's not the end of the world. On to Inferno.
Wellesley Boy 94 has said, so sad to hear about Richard Franklin. Apparently he was rushed into intensive care earlier today.
Oh no! What's this very day?
Yeah, it seems.
Blimey.
I mean, hopefully just gossip that's gotten out of hand. But if not, hopefully not bad news for Richard Franklin. Thoughts of him at this time?
Yeah. We haven't got to him yet, have we?
No.
We're nearly there.
Nearly there. Yeah. Right. Inferno.
That's from Twitter, so take it as you will. Says Wellesley Boy. Until anyone says anything official, best not to think the worst there.
Yeah.
Stars said, this stream is great. Lovely to hear all your passion about this era of the show. Well, yeah. Shall we now get that passion and throw it at Inferno?
It's terrifying.
Ben's first.
It scared you.
Yeah, there's something about the Primords that just scared me because I watched
even the werewolf Primords.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just so sucked into it. Even the Benton transformation got me. And
is it that body horror aspect of it? Perhaps they did it one touch.
Yeah,
and you can become similar to the nanogene gas mask zombies, isn't it? In concept of just a single touch, and
like it might be a bit ridiculous when you've got Starman just looking at his hand and then just smearing it on his face.
It's not, because he acts it very well, actually, Olaf Pooley, doesn't he?
I think the music as well is very haunting in sequences like that. Just the emptiness of it.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we were talking about Ark in Space, and Ark in Space does metamorphosis, and it really goes into the psychology of Noah, and we see him going through that schism between himself, and there's a little bit of that, not a lot of that, but I think Olaf Pooley and the music and the use of the close-up, Camfield's and sort of the master of the close-up, really creates a sense of really unnerving angst, doesn't it? That there's something absolutely horrific happening to him.
There's this lovely unnatural effect they put over their voices as well.
Yeah, there is
the breathing.
That's right. A strange something. No, I don't even know how to describe what the sound is. It's like a crackle, but it's grating.
It's kind of like radioactive.
Not too.
It is.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right. Yes, there's a sort of a Geiger countery sound to it or something, isn't there? Yeah. Dangerous, really unnervingly dangerous sound to it. Yeah, it's an unnerving story, isn't it? It brilliantly gets that sort of the weirdness. There's something for me. There's something quintessentially Pertwee and Doctor, and of course I didn't see this until I was in my 20s. I remember thinking, this awful frustrating thing is why didn't they repeat these bloody things when we were kids? I would have killed to have seen this. This would have just absolutely blown me away, and I wish I'd been young enough to see it. Oh, I didn't tell you about Andrew. Have I told you the Andrew Woodall story? Andrew Woodall, who you Doctor Who fans may know if they're encyclopedic, if Adventure of Space and Time, the actor who plays, is it Rex Tucker, who doesn't get on with Verity Lambert, the producer?
He's very quickly out the door, isn't he?
Andrew Woodall is an old friend of mine, plays that character, and in life, Andrew's very, very sort of, like rather like the character, but in a nice way. But he talks like that, and very, very sort of, he's sort of public school, but very, very sort of bracing man. And we've been out years ago, quite late, and he came back to my. I used to have this flat on Charing Cross Road years and years ago, and we've been talking about childhood memories, and he said, "Oh, that's bloody most dementingly frightening memories of my childhood was a moment from Doctor Who, which was the bloody shop window dummies coming out of the windows in that early one of the Jon Pertwee." And we went back to mine. I said, "Do you want to put it on?" He went, "No, fuck off, Noonan. Don't you fucking dare. That scared the shit out of me as a kid. I don't bloody want to see it again." And he wouldn't let me put it on. And that was how powerful that was for him. And so I sort of, regrets of life that I wasn't slightly older, that I got to see that when I was a little kid. And as people have said about, they tried to recreate it in Rose or whatever, you haven't got the benefit. In Rose, they do it in Cardiff, but they shoot it. You get the glass breaking. Who has ever missed the glass breaking in Spearhead from Space? You imagine you've seen the glass breaking because it's shot on 60mm on the same sort of grain of footage that News was shown at the time, and you're on a real street and you see people being killed at the bus stop. You
see people's reaction to
and
it.
You see Tesco's behind them. A real Tesco's with real 1969 as it was adverts on the walls. It looks like real footage from that period, and that's the sort of the. I don't think there's probably never been a location sequence in Doctor Who quite as powerful as that, and I'm slightly resentful that I didn't get to see it when I was I wanted to the shit scared out of me by that one, and Andrew's response was that he didn't want to ever see it again. Oh wow, that's Doctor Who doing its job, isn't it?
Leaves that impression
because it is too much for some kids. It's interesting, isn't it?
On the topic of the primal voice, Luke Pietnik said it's electronic processing combined with some distortion, I believe.
Well, Luke Pietnik would know, as he's one of the best and most brilliant sound designers that Big Finish have. So there you go. That's from the Pietnik's mouth. Thank you, Luke. Yeah,
that is what I wanted to know.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. But yeah, Peter Miles is you wouldn't know. Go back to we're never going to get out of Series 7, are we? From the performance he gives as Dr. Lawrence, you wouldn't know that he was such a subtle actor as to give the performance he gives in Genesis of the Daleks. And that's very interesting because I think he goes wildly over the top as Dr. Lawrence, but there's never been a more sort of adroit and deft performance as he gives in Genesis of the Daleks. And that
Where are you going? Or do I have to throw you out myself?
Well, as somebody said, it's like the sort of performance you'd see in a really bad ITV sitcom that would never get repeated after the year it went out in 1970, as a sort of a hysterical teacher or something.
I think it's wonderful how, because it's a 7-parter, you get to see his descent across the episode.
Yeah, but he's already reached hysteria in episode 1. He's left himself nowhere to go. So that by the end, he has to be sort of rabid and completely chewing the series pieces. I was going to talk about a little bit
frothing at the mouth for his death scene, couldn't you? Like you could put that in there, and you wouldn't blink.
Surprised he didn't. They should have got him back for a Prime Award. So anyway, Inferno, ingenious of Terrence to come up with a parallel universe. It's sold by everything. The actors are, Courtney's never been better than he is as brigade leader, but and John Levine steps up to the mark, and it's wonderful. It's fascinating to see the Doctor in a world where nobody knows him. He's completely and utterly isolated.
I love the line, though, if you don't exist in this world, then you won't feel the bullets.
Feel the bullets, yeah. That's a great line. That's a great line.
I mean, it feels like the closest you get to a Third Doctor solo story, doesn't it? Similar to what Tom Baker had with The Deadly Assassin.
Yeah.
This has that.
But the added alienation of the fact that there are people who look like the people he knows, but they're not, the added element is that it's the same actors playing different characters, and of course it's the first time we get a parallel universe story in Doctor Who. God knows where that fits into the history of science fiction. How many parallel universes there have been in other science fiction stories before it?
It's a big thing at the moment, the whole multiverse concept in loads of different shows and films.
Is it?
It's in Doctor Who back in 1970.
Yeah, well, it's regardless of how original an idea is, it works brilliantly in that story. And to see the world destroyed is a remarkably powerful thing to have as a cliffhanger, isn't it? That world is completely destroyed. Those people die.
I think the 7-parters really help to set up those stakes as well throughout this series. Like with the plague in the Silurians, that's very built up very well. You get the full terror of that. And I think it helps with Jon Pertwee. His Doctor's often put in these quite almost hopeless situations. And now here suddenly he's in the most hopeless of them all, where he can't actually save anyone. It is already too late. It's just about getting out in time to save another world now.
And again, all the performances, but Pertwee's performance, and then to sell the anti-climax, if you like, of that last episode. And it stands or falls on Pertwee's ability to deliver the aftermath of seeing the worst possible thing imaginable, having seen the creation of the entire world, and the whole the thing that's from the philosopher Schopenhauer about free will and choice, whether free will is an illusion or not, and that could become cheesy or hokey or unconvincing or whatever, but he absolutely sells it. And this is right, because he asked Terence, he said, "Do you think I'm a good actor or not?" I think he was absolutely the last person to ask, because Terence often said, "Well, he wasn't the greatest actor in the world." Well, I disagree with Terence on various issues. Perhaps his positive attitude to the British Empire being one of them, but his attitude to Jon Pertwee's acting, I think Jon Pertwee as the Doctor it gives as good a performance as I've ever seen anybody give in anything, and that sounds like an exaggeration, but I just think he's so charismatic. It's so sort of full of subtlety and sensitivity, and levels and absolutely nails so microscopically often an emotion that's absolutely that's brilliant. You just absolutely found that amongst a whole sort of haystack of choices that would have been okay. You just absolutely found the right one. I see that again and again. I never cease to be impressed by how he never puts a foot. Not only doesn't put a foot wrong, he puts a foot absolutely right, and that's one of those episodes which have been so difficult, so easy to mess up.
I just feel like he's a performer from the wrong time, really. So I think if he was an actor now, then he'd probably have a completely different trajectory of a career.
It's difficult. It's impossible to sort of place somebody somewhere else, isn't it? You know, they're where they are, and
in a way.
Yeah.
Some people ahead of it, but they're sort of characterized by being ahead of their time, aren't they?
Yeah.
If you take them out of their time, they're suddenly no longer extraordinary if they're of a later time.
No.
No,
I understand why this story tops the polls again and again and again. You know, it has its flaws as other things. For me, it's interesting. Yeah, I didn't see the Primords as a kid. The Primords are the full Primords are the thing that lets it down for me. And the ending's pretty naff.
It always was going to be a bit disappointing after you've blown up the world in episode 6.
Well, I just mean the very last bit is like something from some other sort of cheesy sitcom or something, isn't it?
But I'm sort of glad we get that as our last image of not Caroline Ford, but I think Caroline John though.
What, chuckling away?
Yeah, I think it's a nice note to leave her on.
Well, I think we discussed that. It's so different with Dodo. She has, for to another character who disappears, but there's no reason for her to disappear. At least with Liz, she didn't want to be there in the first place. She's an intelligent character with a career.
And she's already sort of been superseded by the Doctor, hasn't she?
Uni doesn't need her. No, she didn't want to be there in the first place. You go, okay, fair enough. So it makes narrative logical sense that she goes back to Cambridge. So isn't a problem.
And her influence is quite rightly felt when Jo comes along with that quote of "What you need, Doctor," as Miss Short often remarked herself, is someone to hand you your test tubes and tell you how brilliant you are. Which feels very Terrence Dicks always. I think that particular quote, I wouldn't be surprised if he.
It's it's 1970, 71, and there's there are people born at a particular time who have particular attitudes, and Terrence Dicks is one of them. Jon Pertwee another. Barry Lett's sort of yearning to be progressive, but still of the opinion that the narrative doesn't sustain that Brighton a companion. There's almost like it narratively demands a thick assistant, and much as I believe in women's lib, we need to have somebody really stupid as a companion, and preferably blonde. And short.
Jo Grant will fill that role admirably as the Brigadier.
Katie walks in with a ring something. But no, I mean, Katie Manning. I wouldn't want Doctor Who without Katie Manning, and it's the Doctor and Jo is my. I thought all Doctor Who was, as I've said.
Liz gets to leave on a very strong note as well of 4 brilliant stories and a really strong season.
Well, she's not in a bad story, and she gets loads to do, and she's never sort of embarrassed by what she's asked to do. I don't think. No, I think no. So.
And she probably left at the right time for her skirt length as well, because they were getting shorter and shorter as the stories went on. So. I don't think that could have.
It's her skirts dated, don't they? Because it's still so the 60s, isn't it? The late 60s. It's still 69 when all that shot. Have we finished? Have we finally finished with series? How are we doing for time?
2 hours and a half.
We're gonna have to give Jon Pertwee 2 birthdays like the Queen had.
I mean, he's
back this time next year.
What time are we supposed to be finishing? 11. Or 12?
Yeah, about half an hour.
God almighty. We haven't got... This is like... Actually, when not Jon Pertwee, what's his name? The bloke who plays the Daleks in Doctor Who these days.
Nicholas.
That's it, Nicholas. When he interviewed Jon Pertwee, when he interviewed Baz and Tel, Barry, they were supposed to get through it all in one interview, and they got as far as. I think they got as far as series 9. Actually, they got further than we did.
Better than us.
And I need to go to the other room for again. So you better look at the chat. Start talking about Terror of the Autons. I'll be back in a minute. All right.
Okay. I'm with Stephen all the way, says Michael Feeney. Just love Jon Pertwee's performance as the Doctor. Always the number one for me.
There's always conviction there. I think he always sells fear, but also reassuring that you're safe. You know, that he's got a hand of it already. And he's assessed it.
Yeah. Interesting that almost everyone in Inferno gets to play 2 characters, says the stylish one. Even Pertwee is the radio announcer. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Dual
going
role
back
there.
to his The Man of 1,000 Voices days, really.
I mean, it's only really Christopher Benjamin who doesn't, isn't it? Because he's
like
the major characters.
Gets killed off, doesn't?
Yeah. Whereas alternative universe self does. Wow.
Should we dive into Terror of the Autons a bit?
Yeah, can do. I think there was one final thing I wanted to say on season 7, but we'll wait for Stephen to get back for that.
Okay.
Just to fully round that off, just having another look through the chat. Lewis says, or it might be Louis, sorry, Lewis or Louis, whichever way round it is. For me, it was the sense of invincibility to the Primords that makes them scary. Most weapons aren't effective unless you have a fire extinguisher nearby. The sense of feeling defenseless is scary.
I think one vivid memory that sticks out about Inferno for me is it was because I watched it in the summer, which is prime time for Inferno. And there was like a heat wave, and we were sort of
you get that wonderful heat haze, don't you?
You get the heat haze. And we were playing out on the field, and there was this howling noise, and I just thought, "Crikey, that's the Primords." So
crikey.
Yeah.
After we failed, we're still on.
Oh, for God's sake!
I would add one last thing.
Luke wants to round season 7 off.
Yeah. One last thing to round it off is that, particularly with the 7-parters, it goes back to Quatermass and the Pits in that it's not just the Doctor or Quatermass facing off against this alien threat. It is them trying to save humanity from themselves. It's Quatermass fighting Breen about what to do with the thing in the pit. It's the Doctor trying to convince humans and Silurians to get along. It's the Doctor trying to stop Carrington from starting a war that will destroy the world. It's the Doctor trying to stop people digging too deep that it ends up destroying the world. It's that wonderful sense of danger that I don't think it's not quite there in Spearhead, because that's very much just fighting off an alien invasion, but that works as a 4-parter. For the 7-parter, there's that nice sense of desperation in these stories that the Doctor is fighting people who maybe don't want to be saved or are too stupid to be saved, arguably. You know, he's trying to stop them from destroying themselves.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's my last thing.
That's a theme. The theme through the 7-parters.
Limited. And I'm sure it pops up elsewhere in the Pertwee era as well.
Well, yes. I mean, he's constantly fighting, recalcitrant authority figures, people determined usually. Well, I mean, each of those. No, the Silurians and Inferno got a similar theme to Green Death, haven't they? It's that quest for cheap energy, isn't it? With the nuclear energy and the Silurians, is what that's Dr. Lawrence's and the miracle and the gas in the crust. That's a horrible thought, isn't it? So are we at liberty to move on to the second Auton story?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Go on then.
Yeah, well, we get sort of like the fully formed what the Pertwee era is at this point, when you have Roger Delgado coming along as the Master and Katie Manning as Joe Grant, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've had our trial run with season 7. Now this is a bit more of a slightly more comfortable era, as some people see it with the unit family, but not quite for you, is it, Stephen? There's not quite that same comfort.
Well, bear in mind that I didn't see season 7 or season 8. I have very vague memories of season 9. There's this notion that was, you know, floated by Barry Letts and all the people who worked on it about the unit family, and there's a coziness to the era. There's a difference between the approach
projection, isn't it?
Well, one of the reasons why the era works, and Ronnie Marsh, who was head of serials, who loved Doctor Who, and they were very fortunate at this time that the powers that were in the early 70s, unlike later eras, by the mid 70s, it's White House has disenchanted the Director General, Sir Charles Curran, and his instrument, Ian MacDonald, and his instrument is Graham Williams, are changing it and being told what to do with it. At this time, you've still got the Hugh Green ethos, and Ronnie Marsh loves Doctor Who and is all for it, and talked and said the great thing about it. He said Barry Letts was an enthusiast, and that enthusiasm was communicated to everybody who was working on it, and there was this sense of people enjoying themselves, enthused with what they're doing, and that communicated itself to the audience. And the fact that they felt like they were a family, I think if that's great in terms of when you're making something. I think I think that this era has a realism to it where you're not sort of seeing people just I think there's some stories, maybe Time Monster is the biggest, the most guilty of this, where that coziness or them enjoying themselves gets in the way of the story being that enjoyable. I think their enjoyment is delivering a really high quality of drama where all the characters are realistic, and our disbelief is suspended.
I think the peak of that balance between unit family and still being an enjoyable story is the Demons, where you get to see more of that downtime towards the start.
Yeah, the Demons gets a lot of flack these days, and that's a symptom of stories that have been for decades described as classics or the best of their kind.
Quintessential, I think, is a word that's thrown around a lot with the Demons.
And then you'll get a new generation wanting to be iconoclastic and say, "Well, it's not that great."
Be edgy.
Yeah, and do what was that phrase that about the sort of teenager you were, Luke? The edgelord.
Edgelord. Yeah.
Edgelord. That's yeah, that's rubbish actually. You know,
and
there's been a lot of that with the Demons. I think of people knocking the Demons. But I think the Demons is very strong, and it's the strongest, and should have been the last, is a contentious point of stories about aliens directing human history. And again, and it's the strongest one, and then it happens again in Image of the Fendant. It happens again in City of Death, by which time it's a hackneyed notion. However much those stories have going for them, but that's the strong, and it's because it's totally nicked from Quatermass and the Pit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it delivers that Dennis Wheatley, you know, Satanism, but it done as Doctor Who, where and the wonderful thing that perhaps is lost on a modern audience because, or Doctor Who fans who know what's going to happen, is what must have been at the time hugely shocking and puzzling, the Doctor seeming to believe in magic for at least 3 episodes of the thing, of the Demons, where he's using iron to ward off Bok the Gargoyle. He seems to be agreeing with the mad old witch. You go, hang on a minute,
the Doctor doesn't absolutely right.
Yeah, that room is. You go, and that's a rather wonderful narrative trick, not dissimilar to another story which is nowhere near as good, but the shock in my childhood, which in an era that I don't particularly like, of Tom Baker appearing to be villainous in the first 2 episodes of Invasion of Time. The fact that Pertwee seems to be a mystic in the first 3 episodes of the Demons must have been hugely surprising. And when I first saw it, and when they showed the whole thing, and Barry Letts introduced it in October of 1983, the anniversary year, I was unfamiliar with it, except having read the novelization, the one that tells you how to pronounce the demons on page 83. The demons. I decided to find my own eccentric pronunciation. The demons. Forgotten what the sort of the nuts and bolts of this was kind of surprised by it, going, oh my, what? Hang on a minute, was the doctor believing in magic? And of course, it's the magic is actually psionic science, isn't it? But that was another one, because my dad, bless him, took me to Longleat. We stayed over in Wiltshire. Took me to London to the Bath to come down from Liverpool to watch that weekend when I was a teenager, and he was impressed by the demons, and he loved sort of Hammer horror films and Dennis Wheatley and stuff, and that was another thing of somebody who isn't a Doctor Who fan going, oh, this one's rather good, as he was by Pyramids of Mars, as he was by Talons of Weng Chiang. That's where and Genesis of the Daleks, where the program transcends just fans enjoying it. Other people going, oh, this one's pretty bloody good, isn't it? Anyway, we're supposed to be talking about. We managed to jump forward to the demons.
I think we covered the demons pretty effectively.
Yeah.
All right, we'll forget about the demons.
Forget
about the demons, and maybe we should just take for granted, no pun intended. Oh, there goes a whole shelf of shit that I was preparing. That Jon Pertwee's solidly brilliant throughout this era. We've got Roger Delgado arriving. We've got Robert Holmes delivering a second Auton story, which, for my money, is as strong as the first one.
It utilizes the Autons more, I feel.
Yeah.
Well, it's great, because it's really sort of showing how sort of sadistically inventive he is, Robert Holmes, isn't it? You've got the chair. That's one of the great moments, that the chair swallowing Harry Taub. And again, those lovely little deft moments of comedy, like we mentioned, Michael Wisher saying, Sylvia, what is Mr. McDermott's entitlement on termination of employment? Lovely little comic sort of gallows humor like that. The doll, the daffodils, the carnival heads, the lunchbox. So seeing and Barry, that's another CSO thing that works. Is Googe in the lunchbox, and they spent ages going, it doesn't work, and then realizing that if they cut out a black piece of card and put it underneath him, it looked like a shadow, because he said it didn't look like he was in the box. And then so that lovely little sort of backstories like that. Delgado instantly terrifyingly compelling just by just standing there and staring.
What a brilliant theme.
Second.
What a brilliant piece of music that goes along with him as well.
Oh yeah. That 5-note Dudley Simpson piece of music is superb.
I mean, we spoke earlier about the wonderful contrasting of the Doctor and
the Doctor being angry and abrasive, and Delgado being sort of urbane and charming, and the sort of the irony of the evil character being the Prince of Darkness is a gentleman. That old phrase, isn't it? I think
a writing in Tolkien's work is that, like, the agents of evil have a face that looks fair but feels foul, or something.
Right.
Something along those lines. Yeah, not exact quotation, but he's fitting that vibe really. But yeah, I think it's wonderful how this story, there's almost very little plot to it. It's more of just a game of cat and mouse between the Doctor and Master. There's a game of one-upmanship between each other.
But again, it's Robert Holmes delivering, and bear in mind this is early days this is before the 4-part format becomes the norm, and it's Bob Holmes sort of basically demonstrating how it's the strongest form for the 70s.
Did he ever write 6-parts rather than?
Well, he wrote Talons of Weng Chiang. But largely, he's delivering Phil Potter's.
Though, is he?
Pardon?
Never for Jon.
No. And interesting, at this time, the 4-parter hasn't become the predominant form. There's probably other more. I think there's more 6-parters than 4-parters in this era. But he gives us, and it's banger after banger. Each one, they're classics, aren't they? Spear from Space, Terror of the Autons, Carnival of Monsters, Time Warrior, and then he takes over, and they are 4 of the strongest stories of the era. And for my money, I think Carnival of Monsters is one of the great masterpieces of the era. It demonstrates just how extraordinarily flexible the format is, and how imaginative Robert Holmes is.
I wonder if it was him or Hinchcliffe more who pushed for the 4-parter and 1 6-parter format.
I think it was a realization that everybody was coming to, and that Letts and Dicks would have done if they'd been able to. I think that was but it just wasn't. They weren't able to break out of it. I think it was, I
suppose the start of a new Doctor was the excuse they needed.
It was, but fascinatingly, of course, for my money, the 3 6-parters in the Hinchcliffe era are the 3 of the, if not the strongest stories of that period. But Genesis of the Daleks, Seeds of Doom, and Talons of Weng-Chiang. And there's very little that's sort of you'd want to cut out of them. We know what we cut out of Genesis of the Daleks. We've talked about that for 10 hours.
Don't need to talk about that anymore.
Seeds of Doom cleverly sort of has a 2-parter and a 4-parter sort of stuck together by having the Antarctic and then. But Talons of Weng-Chiang is a masterpiece of construction, because there isn't anything you'd want to cut out of it in plot terms, and yet it doesn't change locale. Okay, you go from the sewer in the theatre to the House of the Dragon in the last act, don't you, as it were? But it's remarkably sustains its momentum. But we've gone a long way away from Jon.
Now you listen to me.
Now you listen to me.
And
my phone's died. It's that late. Go on. I think we're gonna have to give Jon Pertwee another birthday. Because
I think so.
thinking about Ben's breakfast time.
I think, shall we push to the end of season 8 and then call it?
Yeah, all right. Okay. Well, I mean, I could say so much more about Terror of the Autons because he's one of my favorites, but let's move on to.
We can always do. I'm sure we'll do individual story reviews.
We can do. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna have to do soundbite reviews. Okay. We'll move on to one of your favorite stories, Luke. Mind of Evil. Why don't you kick off with? Is it your favorite story of the Jon Pertwee era?
Very possibly. I'm not. Okay. It's certainly one of the last ones I saw. I was deliberately picking up that DVD until later in the day, so that I knew I had a hopefully strong one to go out on, because I'd heard glowing things from friends such as Ben about this story. And yeah, it is
because for years we could only watch it in black and white, and some people. I remember there was a book I was reading the other day, the About Time book. I was dipping into there, and it said this book benefits. This story benefits from only being able to watch it in black and white because blah blah blah. And I bet the dragon looked crap in color.
Yeah,
and of course, now we've got it in color. I knew it for years in black and white. I remember when it came out in 1998, and I was going through. You associate things with other things, don't you? And I was a very good time for various reasons, and where I was staying at the time I really liked. And it's in this sort of fantastic, sort of sunlit. Must have been the summer of '98 when it came out. There's this sort of very, very sort of sunlit place in the summer with a balcony, and I just remember just being really amazed that we got to see it. I think we never thought we'd get to see it, and then it came out because it was black and white. They're never going to release it because it's only black and white. And then it came out and it was a revelation. I thought it was brilliant, and I still think it's brilliant. And I think it does benefit from the color actually.
I mean, having seen Green Death in black and white, I definitely intend to give Mind of Evil a go in black and white and see how that.
Yeah, well, I think it work. They all work both ways. Let's not be preferential for one thing. I saw most of this stuff in black and white. Obviously, I wasn't as early as Mind of Evil, and it's more frightening in black and white, but color gives you other things. But no, there's certainly the grittiness of this, and it is like a sort of the missing season 7 story. It's Don Horton's second and last contribution. You've got a call back to Inferno with Pertwee's the most terrifying thing that ever happened in his memory are the events of Inferno for the first cliffhanger, which is beautiful. And again, one of those Pertwee delivering that sort of extraordinary line. He says, "We believe what our minds tell us to, Joe," which is such a sort of profound line. But his delivery. There's moments in this of Mind of Evil where I'm mesmerized by how good Pertwee is, and I think he's as good, if not better, than any other Doctor. After he's gone through the Keller process, when he sees
weary he is,
when he sees weary, but also. There's something. When he what's the line where he says, "I couldn't stand out against it. Nothing could." The look in his eye is not weariness, but almost like it's drained him. It's nearly drained him of his goodness. There's almost like a malevolence in his eye that it's left him with something evil. There's something sort of strange as he looks at Delgado there, and that kind of.
I've never seen that before.
Go watch it again.
Watch it again. But I mean, the machine's supposed to do the opposite, though, isn't it? It's supposed to drain people of their evil, as it does with Barnum.
But he's the Doctor. So
I mean, there's a wonderful comment.
What's left when he's drained? You know,
there's a wonderful comment on how we almost need good and evil as a balance within ourselves in the story, about how sometimes it is okay to be selfish in certain scenarios.
Light cannot exist without knowledge of... No, dark cannot exist without knowledge of light. Nor light without dark. What's that from?
It rings a bell.
Going much further, it's enlightenment. Well, it's an old cliche, but it's absolutely true. Manichaeanism, the sort of the balance between the forces of good and evil.
It's the yin and the yang, isn't it?
But I do think there's something very, very extraordinary in Pertwee's eyes at that point.
I think
go on.
Delgado's master has never been better than in this story for me.
No, you're right.
I love the confrontation he has with the image of the Doctor that the machine projects onto him. And that's wonderfully done as well. Like the superimposed Doctor laughing at him is a brilliant effect.
Yeah, and because it could have been dodgy CSO, isn't it? But whatever technique they've used there, whatever sort of superimposition technique is brilliantly surreal, powerful, and feels completely and utterly believable. That it's in his mind, but we can see it. It's brilliant.
You've also got the wonderful Gothic setting of the castle as well as the prison. That adds a lot of atmosphere.
Looks like
you got the knight in shining armor in the governor's office as well.
The suit of armor, No, the sets all look great. They look because they look great in black and white. They look great colorized. They look like real sets. It's got a real feeling of, again, drama that could be next door in a play for today or in a serious prison drama. You've got actors like William Marlowe, who was in loads of gritty drama. We later see him in Cybermen. Mailer absolutely delivering that performance, and also that moment of slight sort of lustful sort of weirdness with Joni. So he does that horrible little lustful kiss to her. So they're giving performances that you'd expect in adult drama, that it's not dumbed down for the kids.
As you Jo's very well served by this story as well. She gets to put a prison riot down towards the start.
Yeah, Jo's remarkably bright in this story. It's a certain story, and I think this was her favourite, Katie Manning's favourite story. Yeah, I believe it was, and that shows because her performance is upgraded. I think it's partly to do with the writing, etc.
Because they're still in season 7 mode.
And I totally agree about Delgado. And I never want to say a bad word about Delgado. And there's a certain in certain stories, particularly the Time Monster, and at times he has a propensity to go a little bit over the top. Never like, Ainley Panto levels, but there are times when he's a little bit sort of mustache twirling, for want of a better, but a bit hammy or whatever. But there's a realism to this. His performance in this, along with everybody else, and I think it's incredibly strong.
I suppose he's just sort of leading into what the script's giving him, really. If the script's giving him the amazing work that it gives him here in Mind of Evil, he will lean into that and build a strong performance around it. Whereas something like The Time Monster perhaps is a bit more Panto-esque.
Yeah, well, as somebody, I think it was actor John Gieler said, style in acting is knowing the piece that you're in and what the sort of acting it's asking of you. And so here we've got a piece that is from start to finish quite determinedly a piece of almost like a sort of a piece of social realism for something else, apart from the fact it's got a transmatting policeman's helmet that goes around zapping people. But aside from that sci-fi novum, as it were, that it's otherwise quite realistic,
well directed as well. There's a wonderful shot where the master is just exhausted, like wiping the sweat off his brow, and then it fades to a shot of the third Doctor in bed.
It's
and
brilliant.
Done so, or it might be the other way around.
One way or the other, it's superb. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I love the transition there. It's almost like the downtime of the story, isn't it? Before we're about to have that huge action scene where the Doctor's telling Joe about that time he was locked up by Queen Elizabeth I, that is. And, talk about the potato and such. And it's sort of done over the Brigadier driving up with this jolly music as we're getting into gear for that huge battle that takes place at the end of episode 5. But yeah, it's all wonderfully put together there. And throughout the story, it's so brilliantly done.
It's interesting that
Benton even gets a little arc in it.
Yeah. Well, disguised as a flasher, as somebody said. No, it's all that stuff and all that location stuff in South Kensington, and the strangeness of seeing the children playing in the playground.
You got the creepy sort of music going on. There's
eerie about the innocence of children, isn't there? Always children are spooky in spooky things. Isn't
it's the innocence, isn't it? Of children?
Yeah, the contrast between the innocence of children and adult weirdness.
Is this the only one where Delgado smokes a cigar?
And it's only the only one where Delgado is listening to King Crimson which is it's an album called In the Wake of Poseidon, by a prog rock band called King Crimson, and I recognized it the first time. That's hilarious. He's listening to prog rock. Yes, I think it is. I think he wanted to smoke a cigar all the time, and Barry Letts said no, it's not right for the character. But he does.
It fits this story perfectly.
He gets his cigar moment in this. Sort of
while he's got his chauffeur driving him around.
Yeah. Ben, what do you think of Mind of Evil? What time is it now? My phone's died. I have no idea what time it is.
5 to 11.
Oh,
bedtime's coming.
Don't want to keep going too long.
Right. Okay. Well, we've done the demons. What we got? We got Claws of Axos and Colony in Space.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly talk about Claws of Axos instead, Ben?
I can do. I think it's the most 70s Doctor Who story because it's just so psychedelic, isn't it? Inside Axos.
Yeah. It certainly is. A lot of top of the pops effects being used in there.
It's one you often like to put on around Christmas, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, it's the third Doctor Christmas special, I feel.
You got freak weather conditions. Snow.
Yeah.
I mean, Pigpin, is it Pigpin Josh or
Guar? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Guar. Yeah. Like emo.
Ding 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 ding.
It's very.
All you have to say, anybody says Claws of Axos, I get that in my head, and I can't get it out of it for 3 days. That bloody music. But anyway,
he very much feels like that Mr. Bean type of character, like Wurzel Gummidge-ish. Doesn't he? Like very much feels like that kind of children's television.
Yeah.
style personality.
Again, we've got the quest, the greed for energy, haven't we? That's a theme.
Yeah. And again, it's the Doctor trying to help humanity when humanity's working against itself.
Yeah.
And the Brigadier, because he's not the authority figure that the Doctor's going up against, gets to be a bit more reasonable, I suppose. Has a bit more intelligence to him.
You have the greed of the third Doctor going, well, it's not our problem. Like, it explores another aspect that he's not quite over the exile yet, John, with the third Doctor.
Right.
Because he's willing to sort of forgo it and just go off into the stars, isn't he? Which is,
you say about how
he wants to get away.
One you believe can go bad.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Just to go back, unfortunately, to where we started, there's a Hartnell-esque, selfishness and propensity to lie. To when he lies to Liz repeatedly in season 7. He lies to Liz about the epsilon coordinates Inferno. He lies to Liz about the key in Spearhead from space. He's desperate to get into that box and get away, isn't he? And that's a running theme that lives with us until Planet of the Spiders, when the whole denouement is about greed and selfishness and the spider being his doppelganger. So that's an interesting thread to pick up on with Axos. My main feeling about Axos is another story. I'm so sorry I wasn't born earlier to have seen the Axons, because I think the Axons are a terrific monster for kids, particularly in black and white, and they look great. The way they kill people, that
little pencil shot and then just blows up.
They're just superb Doctor Who monsters, and again, that's really well shot. And there's the lighting from behind, like it's the same film cameraman A.E. Englander who does that thing with the sunlight behind the monster coming towards you. They does it with the ambassadors, and he does it with the Axons.
For this story, the convention of the Master teaming up with an alien baddie only for them to then betray him has become so commonplace that it's already happened before the story's even started.
Well, it's already by this story becoming it's comical in Terror of the Autons, which is the first time it happens.
Yeah,
when he's surprised. Oh dear! What do you mean? Oh well, I'd better throw my lot with you. It's actually Terence sorted out in the novelization, where the Brigadier threatens him at gunpoint to help, rather than him just realizing that of course the Nestines are bigger and more powerful and more malevolent than he can handle. But it's a motif that soon makes him seem a bit silly, and this program is lucky to have an actor as strong as Delgado, who manages to transcend the silliness of that recurring 11th hour realization that it's all got out of hand again.
I mean, he's all like, he loses control in the Demons. I mean, that's even a cliffhanger in the Demons when
also, he's supposed to be co-equal with the Doctor, but time and again in the last episode, he's revealed as a bit of a klutz who's no idea what he's doing. Happens in Mind of Evil, doesn't he? He's actually no idea how to to mend it or control it, but the Doctor does. And the same in the Sea Devils, and the same here in this story.
I mean, I think he kind of tries to play it off as, well, I need to be over here with this missile, so you've got to deal with this mine machine while I'm not here. Yeah. But it's...
I'm sure there's a bit where he doesn't quite... I don't know what to do, Doctor. You're going to have to help me. Like a child,
Yeah. I love those bits of them working together as well. Like, there's that wonderful, genuine compliment from the Master in Mind of Eve, where he's like, this is most ingenious.
Yeah. Well, again, well, that's where family thing, but I don't like the word really, I suppose, but where you've got actors who are friends off screen and respect each other as actors and are both really bloody good at what they're doing, and that feeds into the relationship on screen, and it's that's palpable that they're enjoying it, and if they're enjoying it, then the audience will enjoy it as well. Not that it is impossible for two people not to get on and for it to work and be enjoyable. It is, because I've bloody well been there. But anyway, are we going to move on from Claws of Axos? So we've got one left tonight, haven't we?
No, it would be, while we're on the topic of Delgado, that wonderful scene where he walks into the TARDIS and it's just like, what has he done? While looking at the mess that the Doctor's made of the console and such. And then you get a nice...
Is that one? It says it's like trying to get a second-hand stove to fly.
Yeah.
Some great lines like that. Yeah.
Don't they go a bit further in a novelization where he's... Oh, no, I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a Big Finish short trip, The Switching, where the Doctor's taken off the the glass bit of the console, turned it upside down, and is using it as a bin in the TARDIS.
No,
and the sort of comes into.
Oh right,
like,
that's not in the novelization.
No, that's not in the novelization of Claws of Axos. I got that's from The Switching.
Big Finish. Okay, right.
Wonderful.
Who wrote that one?
Simon Gurrier, I think.
Okay, a lovely chap. Yes, very nice fellow and very knowledgeable.
Yeah, you got the sort of uneasy alliance between the Brigadier and the Master at one point towards the end of Part 4, which again leads to a brilliant cliffhanger of either we destroy Axos or Axos destroys the Earth. Which is it to be, Brigadier?
There's a lot of that last section which is stuck in that bloody laboratory, which just seems to go on and get sort of unnecessarily convoluted. I think the script loses its way, and you get the sense of the Bob and Dave messness of it that was never quite disentangled, you know.
Yeah. It's almost like too small a set for the amount of actors that they want on it.
It does, and it doesn't. It's only a 4-parter, but it doesn't move on enough. Even you know, and you think, my God, thank Christ, it's not a 6-parter, because it's just about, you know, it nearly outstays its welcome at 4, that one. But I think it's got, you know, the monsters are fantastic. I think that the Delgado's interactions with, as you say, not only with the Doctor but with the Brigadier. What the hell does Jo get to do in it apart from get menaced in the cliffhanger? Not much. Become old, yeah. She's a bit sidelined
and do multiplication as well.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. Which was written on the floor apparently, but he couldn't see it properly, so he went back to the beginning.
Should have done the alphabet backwards instead.
Are we going to move on? We've run out of time, haven't we?
Shall we quickly do?
We can do Colony quick. Yeah, we can do Colony quick.
Okay. All right. Thoughts on Colony?
Okay. I mean, underrated one, isn't it?
All
right.
I just want to while this because I've got all these things ready here. The first novelization I ever bought in 1975 was, and there it is, the very first one was The Curse of Peladon. It's got a crease in the back because I was so frustrated at having finished it that I threw it across the room. Petulant child, you can see that there in the light. The second one was The Abominable Snowmen, which I was reading while the Ark in Space went out, and the third one was
The Doomsday Weapon,
and it's probably a great title. We kids, naughty 70s kids that we were, used to make jokes that they were actually Jon Pertwee's hands, and he was saying something like, what was it? What's that line from that ad that got him into trouble relatively recently?
Show us your.
Yeah. He looks like
you're going to say great balls of fire.
That's what he looks like. He's feeling with. They're not his hands, but that face. It's remarkable. Pertwee's face, and Chris Achilleus was great with that pointillism that he did with it. But it's a face that you never get tired of looking at. That's the thing about Jon Pertwee's face, and also
very interesting face.
And also, what I noticed as a kid was he's got a W under his lower lip. Is actually part of his physiognomy. If you look at it in any photograph, he's actually naturally he was born to play the part because he's got a W under his mouth, for God's sake. But that look of stoical, what I'm looking at is formidable. No other actor had that, and it's a look that sort of leads you towards fascinating
questions and to challenge the norm. And I just think that face says Doctor Who like nothing else. Who the hell that's supposed to be behind him? No idea. Anyway, this is not the greatest likeness of Delgado, but apart from that, it's great. But that's a really wonderful novel, I think, and that was when you got 164 bloody pages. So as opposed to 109 when you get to Image of the Fendal, for instance, and they were, as I've said before, the width of an after 8 mint. Yeah, it's go on. Sorry, I interrupted there, but I couldn't resist it. Go on.
Right. I think it's almost like two stories at war with itself, though, because you've got this very interesting story about the colonists and their fight for independence from IMC coming down, all that corporate skullduggery that's going on there as they attempt to scare them off and go as far as killing some of them. And then you've got the whole master plot, which is still like the reason that the Doctor's there in the first place. There's that funny thing in this story of how it's like a shock reveal that they're trying to trick you into thinking the master's not in this one, and then boom, he comes in halfway through instead. When you've got it revealed in the very first scene that the Doctor's sent there because the master's stolen some Time Lord files. So it's like you're holding off on the master for so long, and yet you know he's coming because he was there, mentioned there right in that first scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the first trip into space for Doctor, or at least with a TARDIS, trip in time, you have that wonderful moment of Jo just sort of being almost abducted, really. You know, she's
and Jo being scared, and which is unusual, isn't it? That the companion not being filled with wonder, but being filled with fear and not wanting to be there, and not wanting to go, and being overwhelmed by it and alienated by it is really interesting.
But you've got the Doctor giddy as a schoolboy because this is his first time being back out there again, and he's lusting for it, even though it's just this grey quarry outside.
Yeah, but
there's that wonderful moment where he's like, "Do you mind if we have a look at this rock first? It looks rather interesting." It was like the Doctor knows that something's going to come along and pick him up sooner or later. So he's like, "If I just keep Jo here long enough, something's going to come and get us thrown into an adventure."
I experienced it for the first time in the novelization, and so I got an idea that it was a more visually impressive story, of course, because in the novelization you can't see the budget. Also, another opportunity to praise the brilliance of Malcolm Hulke in fleshing out the guys. Where you get backstory for Ash and various. But you also get again that thing he does with Stevens in Green Death of you get a more sympathetic view of Dent because of the world that he's been made to think like that. That's the way society. Everybody, if you want to get on, you have to do this, that, and that, and your life is mapped out for you, or else, That's
he's not trapped in this capitalist heavy society.
Yeah, and it's a very, very rigidly ordered society, and he delineates it with his usual extraordinary attention to detail that no other novelist of Doctor Who stories ever bothered to go into that sort of sociological, political, or sort of psychological depth. And that's one of it. I think is that his first one, and of course also we were so confused so much of the time. He introduces Jo in it as well, so we get the scene, the Terror of the Auton scene in this. So I thought for years she joined. That was completely. Hang on a minute, actually, you're joining two stories, and so it was odd, and it was a very late one to see. I had a dream that it was brought out on video when they started bringing it on videos, and I had a dream they brought it out, and I remember vividly that morning waking up going, "Oh, I had a dream I saw Colony in Space." I didn't see it for years and years. It didn't come out for ages. I remember seeing it around at Mark Elstob's on a pirate. Nick Briggs texted me the morning, just out of the blue, as he often does. "What happened to Captain Dent?" He just texted me.
He sort of disappears off screen, doesn't he? Because you
He
got that whole
presu-
shootout,
He'd
and he's not
presumably
there.
just been watching it, and I replied, he ended up playing King Lear at the Tabard Theatre in Chiswick, directed by an ex of mine who turned out to be a lesbian, which is a true story about Maurice Perry. He did, and she did. In the book, he is at the shootout, and he's at the funeral of the people who've been killed in the shootout at the end. The answer to that is they couldn't be bothered to pay Maurice Perry to turn up for one scene on the location because he's only in the studio stuff. So the expedience of filming schedules. Any thoughts on Colony in Space, Ben? Before bedtime,
I think it's a solid, underrated one that I think people should go back and watch. Really,
I would say go back and watch it in black and white because it takes the curse off the shoddiness of the sets. You can't see how crap they are. And it just something about black and white. As like Orson Welles said, everybody acts better in black and white. It focuses the acting. It focuses the politics of it, and you're not thinking about the 70s-ness of it. It just focuses you in on what it's about, really, really effectively. More so than others, because that's what it is about. There's not a lot else going on than the ideas, and it's not a sort of scary for kids story in any way, is it? You know. It's about the politics and the society and all that sort of business. And I suppose whatever else it's about. I'm too tired. I'm time for me to go to bed now as well. We have to come back for Day of the Daleks.
We can do that in January, New Year's Day.
Invent. I know. I feel a bit sorry that we didn't get very far into the Jon Pertwee. Is there anybody still alive who's watching us? Or have they all
we've got quite a few people still watching us. Thank you for sticking with us.
Sorry, we're not doing a late one tonight, but we never planned to, but because it was suggested that we were going to do it as a recording thing. I said I can't do it with my schedule, and as it's Pertwee's birthday, we ought to try and do it. Have it out on the day, and so the only way of doing it was doing it live. But it's been a pleasure as always. And even though this bookcase is demolished, below the things that I never got around to showing you. But another time, what's our next plan? Let's not tell them what we're doing next.
I think we already hinted at it, didn't we? I mean, I can't
remember what it is. What is it?
Been the Web of Fear next Sunday.
Oh.
Is it next Sunday? Why is it next? Why is it next Sunday? Oh, look at those lovely things. Wonder what?
Ben's, little shrine to Pertwee.
There's my little Pertwee shrine.
Just a minute. Is it supposed to be next Sunday?
Yeah, but we can always move things about.
Is that about a specific anniversary?
No.
More just us wanting to talk about the Web of Fear and there being no other excuse.
We might have to not do it next Sunday and do it another time because of stuff. I can't. I was trying to find Pertwee's screwdriver, but I can't. All I can find is that, which is totally irrelevant.
I mean, if you take the head off, it'll be all right.
Yeah. At least he's in the right costume, isn't he?
Yeah.
Jon Pertwee's screwdriver is somewhere around. It's disappeared.
I mean, I'm sure we'll be back together at some point to talk
minute.
about something in the future.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out somehow.
Saraswin says, thanks for another great stream. Always great to hear you all chatting. And the next stream is about my favourite Classic Who story. Hooray. Take care. Right. Nice. I mean, hope we'll definitely get around to it sooner or later. Start this run. Yeah. That's one that we've been planning for a while.
I can't find it.
Yeah, Timescale says, I'm still here. I managed to hang in till the end.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you guys while I'm driving.
I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and yeah, if he wants to get in touch with me, can he put his email address, drop it somewhere?
Yeah, drop it in the comments or something.
Will he be able to?
Yeah, should be once this is all over.
Or up in your channel description or something, Timescales.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah. We'll sort it out somehow. But I'd love to talk to you. It'd be fantastic. Because I saw you talking to Dan. Hadley recently, I think. Yeah.
Ah.
Who I did a thing about with Death to the Ducks, and we're doing. Guess what? He wanted me and him and Simon, who did the Death to the Ducks one. I told you, didn't I? Did I tell you?
Yeah,
We were going to do Warriors of the Deep, and I
Warriors.
said no, I can't face that right now. It's got to be something. So we're doing Image of the Fendal, which is in betweenish. So at least I haven't got K9 in it. Anyway, let's go.
We're at the
and
end
we'll
now.
find the right moment to talk about the great intelligence.
And Ben, you'll also be back tomorrow, won't you, with a pre-record?
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
What's that? What is it?
About the new series finales and talking about those.
Yeah,
So,
is that a solo?
That's me on my own.
Just you. Excellent. Okay. Well, about all the new series finales.
Yeah, and ranking them.
Which is the best? Which is the best new series finale, or is that a spoiler?
I think it's got to be Battle Passing the Ways.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe Dr. Falls as well.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, yeah.
We'll look forward to that tomorrow.
Yeah, very good.
All right, some
gentlemen
and Doctor Adventures.
Superb, and we will reconvene for the great Troughton work very shortly. We shall liaise, the three of us, over the next week. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, look forward to it. It's been a pleasure as always.
And a very Merry Christmas to all of you at home.
Don't mention the War Machines.
No, I have no idea what that's from. Oh yeah, I was going to give you a quiz. No time for that. Never mind.
No.
Too late.
Right.
Too late.
We can do that.
Next time.
Right, we shall see you very soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Are you going to turn me